under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good evening. This is the March 13th, 2017 business meeting of the Milford Board of Education. Welcome. Turn the meeting over to Dr. Fincher for student and staff recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Flanders. So we are going to honor several students tonight, which is really exciting. What I'd like to do is to call up 4 students from Law High School first. Abby Williamson, Asima Karzoon, Tia DeBlasi, and Lexi Fisk. The 4 of you could come up here. I know it's a little tight, but who's missing here? So these are 4 12th grade students from Law High School, and in attendance tonight to also honor them is Mr. Thompson, and also broadcast journalism teacher Chris Kalenich. Chris, okay. So in December, Mr. Kalenich's broadcast journalism class at Jonathan Law entered the Envision Kindness Public Service Announcement Contest, which asked students to create a video that promoted kindness in school. Envision Kindness is a nonprofit organization based in East Lyme, Connecticut, with a simple mission: to promote and inspire acts of kindness, compassion, and empathy. Many Envision Kindness programs focus on youth engagement because young people can be powerful catalysts for change in our communities. Jonathan Law High School seniors, Abby, Asima, Tia, and Lexi, won overall popular choice in the 2nd annual Envision Kindness Student Film Contest for their film, It Only Takes One Person. The group won a $100 cash prize and tickets to a concert of their choice this summer. So I'm going to pause here. You didn't know that? We didn't know that. So what we'd like to do, I'm just going to pause for a minute and let us all see the public service announcement, which I think is like 3 minutes long. Challenged college, high school, and middle school students from across the state of Connecticut to conceive and produce original, lighthearted short films using kindness as a central theme. A total of 40 films were received, reflecting the contributions of hundreds of students. These films were viewed over 43,000 times, and more than 8,500 votes were cast by the public to select contest finalists. The winning groups were selected by an esteemed team of award-winning actors, acclaimed filmmakers, producers, directors, and journalists, including Trey Ellis, Dave Gesh, Janet Grillo, George Norfleet, and Ann Nyberg, all who have ties to Connecticut and volunteered their time. Journalism teacher Chris Kalenich stated, "This contest was a rewarding experience for our kids. we were able to use the PSA to promote kindness in a fun, creative, meaningful way, which had an impact on our entire school. So we want to congratulate our 4 winners tonight and thank each one of them for reminding us of the importance of showing kindness every day in our lives. So congratulations. And what I'd ask is if you would then go and shake the hands of all of them.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Excellent job. Look forward to your feature film.
Congratulations, great initiative.
I look forward to your first feature.
Congratulations, that was great.
Great job.
Awesome, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Good job, guys.
Next, I'd like to call up 3 of our athletes. So I'm going to ask Michael Ross, Brian Luth, and Kiara Smith if the 3 of you would come up here. So these are 3 athletes that have achieved remarkable things, including breaking records, and what we want to do is honor them this evening. So I'm going to begin with our 2 wrestlers here this evening, Michael Ross and Ryan Luth. Mike is a 12th grader. Yes? Senior? Mike? Anyways, and Ryan is captain, and he's in the 11th grade. In attendance tonight is Principal Mac Berkowitz, Athletic Director Anthony Vitelli, and also Assistant Coach Noel Luce in the front there. Unfortunately, Head Coach Dave Esposito was not able to be here this evening. So if you remember, both Michael and Ryan were here a year ago, or at least honored here a year ago, because the wrestling team won the state championship a year ago. Well, this year has been another incredibly exciting accomplishment on the part of the team and these 2 players, particularly in light of that you had some real challenges this year, particularly halfway through the year. I know with respect to a number of the players getting rashes, etc., which has prevented them from continuing to wrestle for a while, etc. But they overcame all of that. This very talented and athletic group of wrestlers makes it fun for all of us to continue to support them and watch them, etc. For these 2 young men, it's amazing to see how much time, energy, and true grit that they've demonstrated that enabled them to be here this evening. But before I recognize the 2 of them specifically, I want to recognize Assistant Coach Luth and also Coach Esposito, because coaching makes all the difference in the world, and we are very cognizant of that and want to pay tribute to you also for the accomplishments of your team and also of these 2 young men. Ryan Luth and Michael Ross's talent and dedication to their sport have not only earned them accolades on an individual level, but they were both very strong contributors to this year's continued success of the foreign wrestling team. Let me highlight for you their individual journeys from this year. I want to say again that both of them were part of the state champion team from last year, and the team also made it to, they made it into the states this year. The whole team did, correct? In other words, you made it into playing at the state level. I know you didn't win the state championship, but I also know that you got to that level this year, which is, again, tremendous for the 2nd year in a row. But let me begin with Ryan, who is the captain of the team, and his weight class is 145 pounds. He is a junior, so these are his accomplishments. 2017 Southern Connecticut Conference Wrestling Championship, New Haven Register All-Area Team, Connecticut State Open Tournament Champion, Connecticut State Open Tournament Most Outstanding Wrestler Award, and New England Champion. New England Champion, which is huge. And Michael, 125-pound weight class senior.
52.
Pardon me?
52. I'm not 100.
We're going 152, okay. Connecticut Conference Wrestling Champion, New Haven Register All-Area Team, Southern Connecticut Conference Class M State Champion, Connecticut State Open Tournament Champion, and New England Champion. When I say "and New England Champion," it's because this is huge. This is the first time in the history of Foreign High School, and maybe Milford, not sure, that we have 2 champions at the New England level. I mean, that's mammoth. I don't know how many teams go. How many teams are in the New England?
168 teams.
168 teams?
For New England.
Wow. Okay. So you talk about the level of competition and the fact that these 2 men won in this championship. It's unbelievable. So while we're happy that Ryan is going to be returning, we also want to congratulate Michael on his accomplishment at making this to a senior year, and what a way to go out as a wrestler. My understanding is that you're going to be majoring in college in physical education, and I presume that you're also going to be wrestling, maybe?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. So we want to congratulate both of these young men again for the tremendous accomplishments that they made as athletes, and congratulate also Foreign High and the wrestling team itself.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Fantastic job.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Congratulations.
So the third athlete that we want to honor is a Jonathan Law High School senior. This is Kiara Smith. In attendance tonight is Principal Fran Thompson, track coach Joe Beeler, and athletic director BJ Cirilla is unable to be here this evening because Law, right as we speak, is the site for the semifinals tonight in basketball. So that's where he is. Kudos keep coming for our athletes. Kiara is another student who is making history. A senior at Jonathan Law, she's left her mark on her school by the accomplishments that she has made in track and field, particularly this year. To earn all of the acknowledgments that she has and the accomplishments speaks volumes not only to her athletic talent but also to her character. We all know you just don't win awards simply because of wanting to. You have to earn them. The extreme hard work of practices, balancing schoolwork, personal sacrifices paid off well for her. So here we go with Kiara's highlights from this season. Southern Connecticut Conference champion in the 55-meter dash. Southern Connecticut Conference champion in the long jump. Southern Connecticut Conference coaches invitational champion in the 55-meter dash. Southern Connecticut Conference coaches invitational champion in the long jump. Most valuable player of the Southern Connecticut Conference Coaches Invitational Championship. McCreevy Invitational Champion in the 55-meter dash. McCreevy Invitational Champion in the long jump. Class MM State Champion in the 55-meter dash. Class MM State Champion in the long jump. Second place at the Open State Championship in the long jump. Third place at the State Open Championship in the 55-meter dash. Aside from being the school record holder for indoor track in the 55-meter dash, the long jump, and the 4x200 relay, it should also be noted that Kiara is the first Milford student athlete to qualify for and compete in the New England Indoor Track Championships in 2 events. If that's not enough, she also is the first Milford student athlete to qualify for the New Balance Indoor Track National Championships, which were held this past weekend in New York City. Kiara plans to pursue the field of communication in college next year. We want to thank you for all that you've given to the Milford Public Schools, to foreign, to track, and to female athletes. Female law.
You said foreign.
Oh. But all kidding aside, what Kiara has accomplished, just like our two wrestlers, is just incredible. And the fact that they are from Milford, foreign and law, is just tremendous. And we are just so proud of all of them. And so I want to congratulate you and ask you if you would please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Excellent job.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations. Is your one jump? 1711.75. You could reset. Let me get it.
I have to say, Kiara, her long jump was almost 18 feet. Can you imagine that? Wow. 18 feet. That's pretty. All right, thank you very much. Now we move on to student reports. I think foreign is first up this evening, correct? Julia Astrom. Julia, I hear it's a special day for you today. So.
It is. It's my 18th birthday,
It's
everybody.
Julia's birthday. Here, that's dedication for you. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for being here.
Absolutely.
Good evening, everyone. During the week of February 20th, it was Kindness Week at Foreign to promote an inclusive school community. Throughout the week, we encouraged foreign students to reach out to other peers. We wanted to spread kindness around the school, and we are teaching everyone to start with hello. Natural helpers and foreign innovative thinkers taught an advisory lesson to their peers about reducing student isolation and promoting kindness. This is a program through the Sandy Hook Promise Foundation. Mrs. Hart's freshman health classes are working on their CPR and first aid certifications. Social studies teacher, Mr. Williams, and special education teacher, Mrs. Braniff, had a guest speaker come into their Survey of America class. Mr. Wilson presented a living history lesson on technology during World War II in the Army and Air Force. This lesson kept the students engaged and even encouraged foreign student Tiana Albuquerque to dress up like a pilot. Students at Senora Convertino's Spanish 3 classes recently created talking avatars in the Sanico language laboratory. Each student had to speak about their daily routines for 1 minute, create an avatar, and lastly save their voice to their avatar. Students were provided a creative opportunity to demonstrate their learning and progress in Spanish thus far. More importantly, students enjoyed this new experience and listening to their peers' talking avatars. This past weekend, Drama Club presented Fame, the musical, on Friday, March 3rd at 7 p.m. and Saturday, March 4th at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. Not only did the show go on, but it went phenomenally. It was an amazing success with a wonderful cast having significant help from tech crew, the art department, and the music department. The foreign community will be running and walking in the Danny Kemp Dash for Danny 5K. Please consider joining us. All abilities and ages are welcome. We hope this is a fun family event for all while we honor the memory of Danny. Join us on Sunday, April 2nd at 11:30 and be a part of this wonderful event. As for guidance, updates from the school counseling department. 88% of the class of 2017 have applied to one or more colleges, and there are over 60 scholarships listed on our website. 355 students will be taking 646 AP exams in May. Counselors are meeting with grades 9 through 11 to select courses for the 2017 to 2018 school year. Counselors are also meeting with juniors about postgraduate planning, including the college search and application process. And postgraduate planning night will be on Monday, March 20th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. in the Media Center.
Hello, everyone. So, as Dr. Fuser said, congratulations to the foreign wrestling team. They finished second in the Class M state championship. Mike Ross, who won his 3rd consecutive Class M championship, and Ryan Luth, who came in second. We were graced with their presence tonight. Mike and Ryan then went on to the State Open Championship, where Ryan was voted the most outstanding wrestler in the State Open tournament. From there, Ryan and Mike went on to competing at New England Championships, where for the first time ever, wrestlers from foreign won first place in their weight class. Both Ryan and Mike won and are considered the best in New England. Foreign was the only school in the New England tournament to have 2 champs from the same school. Congratulations to Ryan and Mike and the entire wrestling team on their accomplishment. Congratulations to Ethan Scutches, who was named the SCC Division II Swimmer of the Year at SCC Swimming and Diving Championships on Wednesday, March 1st at Southern. Ethan led foreign with an 11th place finish in the 500 freestyle and 13th place finish in the 100 backstroke. Congratulations to Sal Folo, head coach of the Milford Indians hockey team, who has been chosen for the Thomas Mohanan Honor Award. This is the highest award given by the association to recognize the outstanding contributions made on behalf of the student athletes in a very high-profile, first-class manner. Sal will receive this award in May at the annual Coach of the Year banquet. Congratulations, Sal. Believe it or not, we started our spring season today with pitchers and catchers. The rest of our sports teams will start on Saturday, March 18th. And with the help of the Milford Board of Education IT department, parents can now register their sons and daughters online to play a sport and fill out all their paperwork. Congratulations to Gino Esposito and Carly Molesky on their selections as Foreign High School's CIAC Scholar Athletes of the Year. They will be honored at the AquaTurf on May 7th for their achievements. And finally, the Foreign High School Athletic Department hopes that you can take some time out of your busy schedules to attend some athletic events this spring. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jonathan Law.
Good evening. In Law Academic News, the Law Support Center has seen a 40% increase in visits from this time last year. Students are stopping in for SAT practice in math and English, and Khan Academy is being utilized to aid the students. The teachers in the Support Center are working with the freshman team teachers to help ninth graders struggling academically. All costs for taking AP exams in May are due to guidance soon. And senior internship applications are due on March 22nd.
In sports and athletic news, congratulations to the following winter student athletes on earning all-state honors. Kiara Smith in indoor track, Kevin Broxton in wrestling, Melanie Coleman in gymnastics, and Megan Maurer and Stella Patrick in cheerleading. Kiara Smith also, as Dr. Fiescher stated, recently competed at the New England Interscholastic Indoor Track and Field Championships and the 2017 New Balance National Indoors. Melanie Coleman and Ryan Wasserman will be Jonathan Law's representatives at the annual CIAC Scholar Athlete Dinner in May at the AquaTurf in Southington. Congratulations to football player Sam Rossi for earning the National Football Foundation Scholar Athlete Award from the Casey O'Brien New Haven County chapter. Spring sports have started meetings and captains practices for their upcoming seasons. We wish them all a successful and happy and healthy season and hope to see them qualify for their conference and state tournaments.
In guidance news, on March 20th, 50 freshmen and sophomores are going on a college trip to UMass Amherst. Law will be hosting the Sophomore Symposium for sophomores and their family on March 22nd. 5 college admission experts from very competitive colleges will deliver information to students about the admissions process, what admissions staff look for in a potential student, and what students should be doing now to prepare. On March 30th, Law is hosting the citywide college fair at Jonathan Law. To date, there will be 103 colleges in attendance, and of those, 20 are from top-tier colleges. And on April 6th, Law will be bringing approximately 45 students to the NACAC National Hartford College Fair.
And in Law Maisie news, today, in order to honor Danny Kemp in her memory, Jonathan Law students wore blue in her memory. This Wednesday, the Jonathan Law Model United Nations Club will be going to the National High School Model UN Conference with students from all over the world in New York City. Students will be representing Uganda and Rwanda in committee sessions and will go to the United Nations on Saturday for closing ceremonies where they will sit in the General Assembly. Last Thursday, Jonathan Law Choir hosted the choruses from Harborside, East Shore, West Shore, and Foreign for a rehearsal for the Music in Our Schools concert, which has been rescheduled to Monday, March 20th. Last week, Jane E. Ku, the founder of Children of Peace Uganda, came to Law to speak to the Model UN members. She is a counselor who works with survivors, mostly children, of the Rwandan genocide. She empowers these children through counseling and promotes peace throughout Uganda. The Jonathan Law Drama Club is starting their last rehearsals in preparation for the performance of Bye Bye Birdie on Friday, March 31st at 7 p.m. and Saturday, April 1st at 2 and 7 p.m. The Jonathan Law Key Club is preparing for their annual trip to the District of New England and Bermuda Educational Conference in Springfield, Massachusetts from March 31st to April 2nd. The National Arts Honor Society will host their induction banquet on March 21st. We invite members of the Board of Education to join us for a showcase on Sunday, April 2nd for Jonathan Law's evaluation by the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. Senior Cotillion is being held at Cascade in Hamden on March 24th. The sophomore ring dance, due to the weather, was postponed until May 6th. And the National Honor Society held their induction on March 9th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As is customary, as we're about to go into the rest of our meeting, if any students want to leave now to go do your homework, this would be a good time to do so. And then we're going to move on to public comment in a minute. Thank you for coming. So is there anybody here this evening who would like to address the board for public comment? If not, I'll forego our public comment. Comment. Okay, we'll move on to chair's report then. The only thing I have is they mentioned this during their student report, but you should have all gotten or will be getting, I got mine I think today, an invitation to the NEASC workshops on April 2nd at Jonathan Law. So I just want to remind everybody to make sure you RSVP so that they know who will be there. I didn't have anything else to report this evening. Let's move on to superintendent's. Oh yes, Dr. I'm sorry, Mrs. Krasinski.
Thank you. You elevated me there.
Oh, I'm sorry, liaison reports, yes.
Building committee, we met last Thursday. It was only to talk about West Shore Middle School. There is a change order already. The DEP is requiring a water retention depression at the back of the school behind the new parking area. There was a change order from the contractor. The amount was not approved because we think, as well as the architect, that it's too high, but it's not going to hold up construction. There's the DEP is also requiring, I think they're called galleys, I can't remember, but a special water retention system near the front of the school. But they've done some additional testing and decided that, discovered the water table is too high, so they've got to go back and see if we can get that eliminated, but that is going to, if they have to do it, that's going to cost some extra money too. And the next meeting is March 30th.
Thank you. Other liaison reports? Just quickly, I did go to the PTA council meeting and apprised them of some information with the budget, and they had a presentation by the Boys and Girls Club. It was a relatively short meeting. Anything else? Okay, superintendent's report. Dr. Fieser.
I'll begin with the instructional highlight, which is going to be on performance-based assessments, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Burt.
Hi, good evening. One of the things that we've been taking a close look at is our assessment practices, particularly in light of our new district goals that were just recently passed last year. And in particular, taking a look at our third goal, which has some very significant and important changes to it. And we believe that as part of this process, we have to take a close look at our assessment practices. As part of that, Mr. Scott here, coming from his previous district, had done some work with what's called the Tri-State Consortium in assessment. And so I asked him to explore the possibility of doing that here in Milford. And he was able to team up with some other local districts, pool our resources, and bring some incredible work to the district. But I won't steal his thunder, so I'll hand it over to Mr. Scott at this point.
One more.
One more coming around.
Are you good?
Yeah, we're fine.
No, there's the other one. They were sticking together. Good.
Does everybody have one?
Yes.
All right, so as Jeff mentioned, very specifically from the time I got here, we started really focusing and concentrating about Board of Ed goal number 3, which is that Milford students will be able to solve complex problems using evidence that they will analyze and research. As we started to look at that goal, one of the issues or obstacles that came to light very quickly is that we really don't have any data to guide the instruction around problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, and analysis. This is not a unique problem to Milford, and as Jeff mentioned, when I was in the Weston Public Schools, we took an undertaking pretty similar to this district board goal, and looked very specifically at critical thinking, creative thinking, collaboration, and analysis. When I was there, we were fortunate enough to be able to work with Tri-State Consortium. Tri-State Consortium brought in learner-centered initiatives, which was a group originally located in California, but is also now located in Long Island, New York. In multiple districts across 3 states, we were able to come together to begin this work in creating new types of assessments. Now, performance-based assessments are a little bit different than what we probably normally think of if we think of assessment. So if I asked you all to go back to 9th grade and think back and your teacher told you it was going to be an assessment tomorrow, you'd probably think of a test. Performance assessments are not tests. Performance assessments ask students to solve complex problems in a meaningful way. Usually those complex solutions or solutions to those complex problems are shared with an authentic audience, an audience that can actually cause change within that field or within that problem. So performance tasks do look very different than regular assessments. When I was in Weston, we worked with 32 different districts in an attempt to try to create an internal assessment framework that would give us real usable data to change instruction and be able to help students to be able to solve complex problems. But we saw this mirrored in district board goal number 3. So we thought, you know, let's pursue this, let's take a look at what kind of performance assessments we could do. Unfortunately, we just didn't feel as though we could lead that work, and we began to look to see if there was some sort of a way to mirror what happened in Tri-State. So I reached out to Learner-Centered Initiatives and Giselle Martin-Neat, and originally, when I first talked to Jeff, my goal was to get her to come for 1 hour, and that was what I thought I could afford. So I reached out to her because I have remained in pretty constant communication with Giselle over the years, and I asked her initially, could you come to 1 hour for social studies teachers and talk about performance assessment and authentic assessment practices? So she said absolutely, you know, and she started to work with me with some costs. I went to Jeff, I shared that with him, and he said, let's see if she can't go a little bit bigger. So I went back to them and I said, could we undertake some sort of a program that would mirror what we had done at Tri-State Consortium? And she said, of course, we'd be glad to do a 2-year program with you guys to develop real meaningful assessment. And then she sent me what the quote was, and I said, okay, we can't do that. So I went back to Jeff, and Jeff said, what if we tried to reach out to some other districts that might be looking to undertake these types of assessments at the same time that we are? So we reached out to Stratford, and we reached out to Amity Regional School District. Stratford had actually participated, or the superintendent of Stratford had actually participated in Tri-State when she was in Newtown, so she was very familiar with Giselle's work. Similarly, Chip Dumais, who's the superintendent over in Amity, had also worked very closely with Giselle during his time in Newtown. So they were both very excited about the opportunity, and once we dispersed the costs, it made it much more manageable and something that we could actually do. Our hope with this is that we're going to be sending 15 secondary teachers, mostly from the academic core areas, to our training. The training will take place over this summer and during next year. They will receive additional support for the following year, but at that time we'll be able to send 15 additional teachers out for training. Very specifically, our main focus and our main hope is to develop internal expertise, because we don't want to have to rely on somebody from outside of the district in order to develop meaningful assessments to measure whether or not students can solve complex problems. So that's our main focus, but there are some other outcomes that will come from this as well. One of the really big advantages, of course, in participating with other districts is we will have access to all of the assessments that are developed throughout the course of the 2-year program. So we will be sharing these assessments that we create with Amity and Stratford, and likewise Amity and Stratford will share their assessments with us. In addition to that, the interdistrict opportunity really allows our teachers to work in a more collaborative fashion with teachers from other districts in order to vet, in order to make sure that those assessments also are measured for validity and reliability, to ensure we really are measuring what we are hoping to measure. Because one of the difficult parts with developing performance tasks is to ensure that you really are measuring critical thinking when you think you're measuring critical thinking.
Brian, just to interrupt you,
Yep.
it's 15 teachers from each district.
From each
correct?
district, so it'll be a total of 45 teachers. As I mentioned, we did this work in Tri-State Consortium. They did it for 5 years. They're going into their 6th year of the Performance Assessment Design Initiative through Tri-State Consortium. And over those years, Weston participated in every one. I was the process facilitator for the Performance Assessment Design Initiative in Weston. And we have a variety of performance assessments that were developed in that. I thought I'd share one of them with you, and you have a handout on it called the Global Petri Dish. In this assessment, we look to create an interdisciplinary assessment that would call upon students to use information from 2 separate classes, which is not an unusual practice. Normally, you see this take place between English and social studies. Sometimes you see it take place between science and math. We decided to go in a completely different direction, so we connected science to social studies. We first started off the work by having our teachers read a book called The Disappearing Spoon, which is about the history of the periodic table. And then after that, we began to look at the curriculum to look for spots where we could make clear connections for students that they could easily tackle. In 9th grade, all students in Weston take biology, and similarly, all students take modern world history. In those courses, we saw some clear overlaps, which was about disease, the topic of disease. So during the course of the year, we continuously measured students and their ability to solve problems within the class as a formative assessment to measure where they were currently. And then they were presented with a problem of what disease posed the greatest threat to us today. It sounds like a vague question, which was a really important part of this performance assessment because we wanted the students to be able to interpret that question in a multiple of ways. Some students looked very specifically at the us as being teenagers. Other students looked at us in more of a community aspect. And some of the students looked at the us in that question as being a global problem. We got a wide variety of answers to that question. The students had to conduct an extended research project on the disease they had selected as the greatest threat. And then they had to prepare public service announcements that would be shared. We brought in an authentic audience, which really changes the aspect of the performance assessment. So the authentic audience for that particular task that you have there was the State Department of Public Health, the Westport Board of Health, and then also Greenwich Hospital. They all came in and served as an audience for the public service announcement that were shared and gave feedback directly to students about their products. The students did select a very wide variety of diseases. I was sharing with Dr. Fieser earlier today that you got all the ones you would kind of anticipate. Students who were very interested in global issues talked about things like malaria. Students that were more concerned with teenagers or young adults really talked about things like opioid addiction. And then one student interpreted us to include your family pets, and she talked about the greatest threat as being rabies. But every answer was supported by evidence and supported by research, and that's really what we were measuring, was the students' ability to take on those complex problems. So that's what we're going to be doing. I think it's a very exciting opportunity for our teachers, and it's also a great opportunity for us to work with some other districts. You'll also see 2 biographies that I handed out to you. Those are the people that will be serving as the external facilitators for the program.
Any questions?
Yep.
Mr. Whiskeyman?
How difficult was it to acquire the audience? I mean, these are people who are busy,
yep.
Have a lot of commitments, and I would think it would be a challenge to
get
an authentic audience.
Yeah, it is important to have somebody who serves as a facilitator, and we will do that within the administrative part of Milford. But surprisingly, people are really excited to get in and interact with the kids in these projects. For example, we had one 7th grade project in which the students tackled the issue of dwindling student enrollment in the Weston Public Schools, and we asked the Board of Education from Weston to come in and serve as the audience. That project ended up going so well that the board then the 2nd year invited in the selectmen who then invited in the zoning board, which caused all kinds of questions based on the student responses, because the early response that the kids had to that when we talked about dwindling student enrollment is kids said, oh, that's easy. You know, you just split the buildable lots in half and then we'll have twice as many people in Weston. The gentleman from the zoning board about lost his mind when the kids said that. We also had a student who suggested restructuring the schools. We had students that suggested things like increasing the number of students from out of district that were allowed to attend school. Some of the ideas were great, some of the ideas weren't. But it was an opportunity to get adults into the building to interact with kids, which is a really great opportunity for community organizations as well. You know, there are a lot of people that would get very excited about coming in and working with the students, and that's who we'll look to. But we also reach out on the state level as well.
Ms. Federico?
So I just have a question, and it may be obvious, but I just wanted to confirm. So as part of this process, the assessment is coming up with these problems.
Yep.
And then a framework for evaluating the solutions that the
and
students
the framework
provide?
is really the kind of difficult part.
Okay.
You know, it's easy to think of problems.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of them around. And we do try to pick real problems that the kids can get interested about. So usually it's things that kind of impact them directly. The difficult part is structuring that framework that will measure student growth in things like problem solving, because, you know, without a place to start, we really need to start with formative assessments that will measure those basic skills before the students get involved in the complex problem solving.
Okay, so in this example that you gave us, there's another piece to it that's...
Yeah, it's directly aligned to both that
piece.
particular one is directly aligned to the NGSS science standards and also the C3 framework standards for social studies. We also aligned it with Common Core standards. And then within that, we began to build a framework of rubrics that would measure student growth over time.
Okay.
And then we anchored it through triangular anchoring with SAT. At that time, the SBAC still contained a performance assessment, and then also student grades.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Ms. Krasinski?
The teacher leaders that will be selected across both high schools, are they classroom teachers? Or
Yes. They are classroom teachers, and it will be high school and middle school. We're starting off secondary school in general for this first go-around. So right now we have teams from teams from each of the middle schools, teams from each of the high schools, and also one representative from the academy.
And different disciplines.
Yes.
And these dates, these 6 days, they'll be taken out of June 12th is supposed to be a non-school day, but it's now a school day, I'm guessing. Are they being taken over?
We're going to try to figure that out. Obviously, when we originally planned this, that was not supposed to be a school day. So, yeah, we'll see how much snow we get tonight, but we'll figure that out as the best of our possibility. But we tried to align all of the dates so that the teachers would be pulled out as minimally as possible.
Good questions? So I love seeing the collaboration. I hope that we'll be seeing more of this. I think it's...
Yeah, you know, they were very excited to get involved with the program because of the people that will be leading it, but I think it'll be a great opportunity for us to build those bridges between the districts so that we can really do this more often.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Scott. The next presentation is our school safety and security report, and I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Riccitelli and Mr. Nielsen.
Thank you, Dr. Fieser, Mrs. Glenn, and members of the board. We appreciate the opportunity to come before you tonight to talk about some of the things that we have in place in Milford Public Schools that distinguishes our school district from many other school districts around the state and around the country. We long have prided ourselves in really prioritizing the safety and security of our students, our staff, and the people that come into our buildings. It dates back just after Columbine. The city of Milford received a grant, a federal grant through Rosa DeLauro's office, which put into place the initial systems like the front door cameras and the front door buzzers. And at that time, it's really state of the art. Was not much of there was not much of that around the country, or certainly around the state. Obviously, fast forward and sadly to Sandy Hook, After Sandy Hook, within a week to 2 weeks, Dr. Fieser, Chief Mello, and Mayor Blake had the foresight to form the Safety and Security Working Group, which met on a weekly basis, then on a bi-weekly basis, and now meets on a regular monthly basis. But we formed partnerships with all of our public safety agencies, obviously the police department, the fire department, the health department, but we form relationships at all levels, state government, federal government, and we have in place not only those relationships, but we also have some of the best equipment that there is out there today. So we want to give you an overview of what we have. It's going to be at a high level. And again, I think we have the people in place, and one of those people is Jeff Nielsen, who you know is our safety and security coordinator, who's done a tremendous job. And I'm just going to turn it over to Jeff, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. You still have my presentation, but it's okay. No, so good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing us to present on this important topic tonight. And taking the time, especially with the storm coming up. I know a lot of people have loose ends to tie up, so it's nice that everyone was able to make it this evening. I'm going to introduce myself already. I'd just like to introduce Sergeant Darren Delmonte real quick. Sergeant Delmonte will be helping out with the presentation tonight, and he'll introduce his staff in the back during that part of the presentation. So as we go through the board's priority number one, and I'm not big for reading off the slides, but for this one I will. Our schools will be safe, orderly, and caring places to support and promote learning and positive relations. That's huge, and it's very impactful. And as you'll see through this PowerPoint presentation, and when Sergeant Delmonte speaks, we have a lot of collaboration here within the city of Milford with our public stakeholders and within the schools, and with the infrastructure we have in place. We provide safe environments for our students, for our staff, and for our visitors to our buildings. So as Mr. Richtelli mentioned, we're going to provide you some highlights. This is a general overview, and I will apologize in advance. You will have some questions during or at the end of the presentation. Some of those I'll be able to answer, some I won't due to the sensitive nature of some of the materials that we covered tonight. So as we go through this, the District Safety and Security Working Group, we'll talk about the importance of that, and I think the highlight of this is the representation we have with our first responders, with our police, our fire, our health, our student transportation, and the different people within the school district that bring a lot to the table. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about our school-based committees, which are smaller versions of our district-wide working group. And we have 3 committees that we'll talk about and what they do individually in the schools. They'll report back to our district group to kind of form a foundation and a framework on what we work off of. We'll talk a little bit about our school incident management manual, which I have right here. This is given to all of our district administrators in our schools, and it's given to all the stakeholders as well that I mentioned earlier. So we all work off a common plan. We're going to talk about incident management, and we're going to talk about NIMS, which is an acronym for that, and how everyone needs to work together with a plan to make things work cooperatively within our city. And then we'll talk about the assessments. We have our police department, our fire department, and within district, we do security assessments and fire inspections annually on our buildings. And you'll see in the presentation how that information is so important. It drives so many different things that we do in regards to our planning and our recovery efforts if we did have an incident in one of our buildings. And then we'll talk about training, what we do annually, what we do during the school year with our staff, and why it's so important to continually train. Because when people train, that's how they're going to react during an emergency. So we really need to reinforce that throughout our school year. And we'll talk about our safety and security upgrades, which Mr. Richtelli talked about. There's been a lot of investments, personally, professionally, and financially within our district and what we have in place. And I'll say this probably several times during the presentation, that we are ahead of the curve in Milford. And you ask any other school district, and we are a model district for the state. And then lastly, we'll talk about our partnerships with our outside agencies. As you can see in the back row here, our police officers took their time to come out tonight and to support what we do and support our mission. Again, our fire department, our health department, all the other community and state and local agencies and federal agencies. We have great partnerships, which you'll see during the presentation. So our District Safety and Security Working Group, we talked about this briefly with Mr. Richatelli, established in 2013 as a result of a tragedy in our state. So this group, this framework for this group was actually established in the 90s after Columbine. So we just revised a few things, revisited some things. We looked at best practices, we looked at equipment needs, we looked at training needs. And this group was able to bring a good representation, again, from fire, police, health, student transportation, and people within our school district. So we have all the information, we have all the subject matter experts to develop and revise our plan to make sure we're where we need to be in our school district. There's oversight to the board as well, to the group as well. We report to Dr. Fieser and to the Chief of Police, Chief Mello. And we receive great support, great guidance from them. And we're very proud of what we did. But the bottom of this is the most important. You'll see, from the Board of Education, we have representatives from the Facilities Division, Operations, myself. We have principals from each level, high school, middle school, elementary. We have people from special education. And we have our police department, our fire department, our health department, student transportation. So if you look at any type of hazard we may have, we have a framework in place that will support that. And we have the experience and the guidance from all those different agencies to make sure that our plan is going to work within the city of Milford. So as we talk about priorities, I mentioned this before, the acronym NIMS, the National Incident Management System. There's a lot of repetitiveness in here because I talk about our stakeholders, our first responders, and what we do here in the Board of Ed. Everyone has to be on the same playing field. So we need a plan in place that knows that if police come here for a certain type of incident, they know how we're going to respond, whether it's a fire, whether it's a bomb threat, whether it's a gas leak. The framework's in place. We're going to do the same thing each time. It's just a different incident we'll deal with. So the National Incident Management System provides a platform so everyone knows what everyone else is doing. Now think about that for a second. Now you have 5 different groups that respond to a scene of the school, and nobody knows what they're doing. That would be chaos. That's the importance of making sure we all work together. We have a common plan. We have common terminology that we share. And we have a common goal. We ensure that the manual is used in the schools. The manual is updated annually. And if we have to change anything during the year, we do that. We receive feedback from different things you'll see later on in the presentation through assessments and drills and other things that drive changes to this. Right now we meet monthly as a full group. In the very beginning, in 2013, we met weekly. Then we went to bi-weekly. And when we thought we were at where we needed to be, then we met monthly. So once we built our framework back up and knew we were at best practices and current technology and current training, we were able to bring back how much we meet. And debriefing with safety and security incidents. This is really unique, and we've started doing this year. So if we had an incident in a building or a school that we can learn from, if we had to evacuate for some reason, we're going to sit down as a group afterwards and debrief on that. And then we're going to take those best practices and those lessons we learned from that, and we're going to summarize that and put it in a report. And then we're going to share that with the other 13 schools. Very impactful. Think about that for a second. The other schools may not ever go through that type of incident, but they're going to learn from what we gather from that session of debriefing and summarizing that and giving that back to them. And they can go back to their schools and they can share that with their incident management teams. It's very helpful in making sure that we're all on the same playing field. School-based committees. Each school, now I talked about the district working group for a second. Each school has 3 different and distinct committees within their buildings. First, I'll start off with the school safety and security individual working group within the school. Same makeup primarily of what the district group is. However, we shuffle a few positions around in there, but we include parents. We include social workers. We include school nurses at the local level. So they'll take what happens in that individual school, their concerns, their ideas, their thoughts, and they'll report back to us, the district group. And then we'll take that information and we'll use it for, do we have to do different training? Do we have to make a revision to the manual? So that information, that feedback is very important. As far as the Safe School Climate Committees, the district has a Safe School Climate Coordinator. And then each building has a specialist within that building. And within that building, they also have a committee. And that committee meets, and primarily, if you think about it, it's a preventative measure within our schools. If we can prevent any type of violent act from occurring, and we saw tonight with some of the students talking about the respect campaigns they were doing in their schools, that's preventative, that's proactive. If kids are treating each other with respect, they're treating their staff with respect, if we can embrace that in our schools, that's a preventative measure for us to make sure that we have positive interactions in our buildings, which goes a long way. And then we have our school occupational safety committee. They meet and talk about different things where we may have hazardous conditions in the building, more safety stuff. Is there a slip and fall issue in the building, or is there a staircase that needs to be replaced? Things of that nature. And that gets reported back. We usually funnel that to our facilities division, because any type of building defect, they'll have to follow up on that to make sure it's corrected in a timely manner. So all these committees report back to us. They usually meet 3 to 4 times a year. And in addition to that, at the very bottom,
Incident.
So in addition to those 3 committees, each school has an incident management team. And that incident management team is tasked with, and I'll put it very general, they're tasked with coordinating any type of response efforts at that school until first responders or somebody is trained above them gets there. So if we have an evacuation in a building, they're going to be charged with coordinating the crowd, doing any notifications that need to be done, doing any type of media coordination that has to come back to central office. So they're outside and they're doing all the work that first responders would do. But once the first responders come, then they work together. So we have a district incident management team, and each school has an individual. So if you think about it, the climate we live in now, there's 4 groups that a lot of these schools didn't really have before. It's the world we live in, but the schools have embraced this. The building administrators have embraced this, and they do a very good job of this. You know, my hat is off to them when they have to do this stuff, because a lot of stuff goes into the day with education, curriculum, and everything else. They didn't sign up for this in the beginning, but they do a very good job. Okay, so I'll move on to the school incident management manual, and I talked a little bit about it. This is what we work off of. If you think about everything we do, after-action reports, assessments, drills, feedback, everything that comes back to us drives how we do revisions to our manual and what we do. And this manual contains an all-hazards approach, whether it's weather-related, man-made, chemical, whatever it may be, whatever can happen in our school. This manual is going to cover that in our action guide. We have concept of operations, organizational structure, roles and responsibilities. We have appendices for different forms we use or different processes we do in the building. And at the end of it, we have annexes for each school. This plan is a common plan we use for all the buildings. However, some schools have some unique dynamics to them. And with those dynamics, we want to make sure that they're somewhere documented. So if our first responders, who also have access to this manual, they're going to know if they're going to a particular school. Is there a natural gas pipeline that runs near the property, for example? Things of that nature. You know, where are our evacuation areas if we have to go off-site? Where will those students and staff go to? Those are the things that our first responders want to know. So there's a lot that goes into this. There's a lot of work that goes into it. It's a basis for our training. We work off of this. So if we have, I mentioned before, our drills that we do. The drills are based off of the feedback we get when we put into our action guide. And this is updated annually. The state of Connecticut provides us with a template. They do with every other school district in Connecticut. We've taken that template and we've tweaked it, and we've made it work for Milford. Safety and security assessments. Under Connecticut law, they require us to do assessments, vulnerability assessments, every 2 years. So we have to look at what's in our buildings, what our weaknesses are, and how do we improve those. And our police department helps us out tremendously with the assessments. They do them manually. The school resource officers are trained in how to do assessments through their school resource officer program training. as well as some other ones through crime prevention through environmental design, which is unique in and of itself. Our fire department does annual fire inspections. And they go through, and they work very closely with our facilities division to make sure that fire code compliance is upheld, the buildings are in good shape, the alarms work. Is there anything in the hallways that might obstruct people from egressing out of the building safely during a fire evacuation? So, collaboration, good partnerships, as I mentioned before, very essential here. And as I mentioned before, the information gathered from the assessments is used to enhance our safety and security posture in the district. If we don't know what's not working well, or if we have to upgrade equipment, or if we have to change some training, we need to know that. That's what's gathered in the assessments. Training. As far as our training, we conduct annual training with all Milford Public School staff. We do an overview of our action guide and our manual and what they need to do in our buildings. We talk about the equipment, where the equipment is, how the equipment works. No one's using this equipment on a daily basis of it, but they need to know how it works and how to respond to it and where it goes. So they know help will be coming if a device is pressed or they call on a radio, for example. Crisis drills in the buildings. State law, we're supposed to do a certain amount of drills, a certain amount of fire drills, and a certain amount of crisis drills, whether it's weather-related, whether it's an intruder in the building, whether it's weather, gas leaks, whatever it may be. So we try and switch those up, and we try and switch up the drills during different times. So it's not where students may be sitting in a classroom. They might be passing between classes, or they might be sitting in a cafeteria having lunch. So you never know when that incident could happen. So you don't want to limit it to the easiest thing where everyone's sitting in your classrooms. So we changed it up quite a bit. And we get feedback from these. And the feedback's provided by the police officers when they do crisis drills, and the building administrators or the police officers when they do the fire drills. And then we provide that back to our fire inspector, who reviews that as well for compliance and any suggestions that they may have. On the very bottom, our school bus safety drills. These are conducted twice a year. We actually do school bus evacuations. School buses will come up in the morning. They'll drop off the kids. The bus company provides additional staff for it. Building administrators and staff come out, and it runs very smoothly. And I don't think it really takes up too much of the day. Principal Thompson, right? A few minutes after.
Favorite 2 times a week.
Yeah. Nice. We do it in warmer weather, so everyone likes us. But again, you think about this. We want to cover every aspect of where people may be, where an incident may happen. Now we get into our safety and security upgrades. As mentioned earlier, there's been some significant infrastructure upgrades in our district, very big. And the investments have been made personally, professionally, financially. We, again, I'll mention it a second and third time, we are ahead of the curve here with what we do. And that's, again, we contribute that to the input from our police, our fire, our building administrators, and our staff and students. So, the funding for this, you can see up here, $3.5 million funded by multiple sources. The state of Connecticut did a competitive education grant for safety and security. We were one of the recipients in the state for that, and we received a significant amount of money for that, as well as the capital improvement program for the city of Milford and the Milford Board of Education budget. So, 3 different sources for that. So, some of the upgrades. As you can see here, first, identification cards. Every employee from Milford Public Schools has to have an ID card. They have to show this, it has to be visible, either around their neck or on their waist. The importance of these, when I do trainings, I tell the staff, you know you belong in your building. However, if a police officer, firefighter, or we have someone from an outside agency coming in from mutual aid from a different town or city, they don't know who you are in your building. You need to be identifiable. You need to be warned so people know who you are. This also provides a natural deterrent for people, someone who may come onto our grounds who doesn't belong there. Now they see someone who's identified as a school employee, they may think twice about what they might be doing on the property. They may leave. So there's a couple of benefits to this. In addition, we went one step further with this. Our facilities employees were issued uniform shirts in 2016. Prior to that, They wore something that was appropriate for the school day, but comfortable. Now, our custodians wear a maroon shirt with a patch that says Milford Board of Education with the seal, and the facilities employees wear a blue shirt. Again, think about that. It's a natural deterrent. Someone sees a school employee on the property, they may think twice about what they're doing there. We went a step further with that. Our security guards have a standardized uniform now. It says security on it. That identifies them as a security officer for the Milford Board of Education. Again, the presence is key here. Access control. We have electronic access control in all of our buildings. In addition to that, we have physical locks from the elevators, the locks you use in your house. So the importance of this is that our first responders, if they need to get into a building for an emergency, I'll kind of get ahead of my presentation. The police department has a dispatch center. Within that dispatch center, they have a computer program that they use when they dispatch their calls. We have floor plans in there. Our floor plans have identified doors that says which door can be accessed electronically with either a swipe card or this little gadget here, which is a fob, we call it. Is everyone familiar with this? So the police department was generous enough to say, you know what, we'd like to be able to have access to your building, so let's look and see if we can actually have our fobs for our building work on your buildings. And they did. They work on our buildings. So they can get in any of the electronic access control doors during an emergency that we need them to. So think about that for a second. I'm going to go through a little scenario. We have a call at one of our schools, and the dispatcher police department gets the call. They put it into their system. They're able to bring up the floor plan for the school. So the officers are responding. They're going there. They're giving them a play-by-play of where to go based on the floor plans they're looking at and what door they can get into based on the information that's given by the school. So if they say, hey, we're in a gymnasium at Foreign High School, for example, they don't have to go in the front doors of Foreign. They can go all the way down, and they know which door they can get into at that school. It's an expedited response into our building. In addition, our fire department has access as well. So visitor management. In our buildings, we want to make sure that we're vetting our visitors. We don't want to let just anyone into our schools. Our parents go there, some visitors, some contractors, whoever it may be. We need to make sure they're vetted properly. So we have school greeters who are stationed at our 8 elementary schools and our 3 middle schools. In addition to the greeters, we have security guards that work in our high schools. They oversee visitor management, keeping our schools safe. And what they do, there's different technology. First off, they have what's called, we use a branding, what's called an A-phone system. So they're able to see a camera of a person at the front door and speak with them without even opening that door. And a lot of our greeters are actually placed in a line of sight so they can see the person outside the doors as well. They're able to vet that person. They greet them. There's signs outside of our doors that give them instructions on how to get into our buildings and what we want from them. We want to see an identification card when they come in. They know that in advance. So the greeter will speak, they'll communicate with them or the guard, and then once they're vetted, they're able to electronically unlock that door, and they're allowed into the buildings. And our secretaries also have that same device at their desks in the event it's after hours, or our greeter may have went away from the desk for a minute or so. So think about this, it strengthens our security at our front entrances. People just aren't walking into our buildings. We want to make sure that they're coming in properly and that they are appropriate visitors to the schools. The second piece of technology we use is School Gate Guardian. So, as I said before, they're outside, they read the sign, they know they're going to bring an ID in. Once they go and meet with that visitor management personnel, they need to provide a license or some type of a photo ID. So, once they provide that to the greeter, they will then scan that through a device, and they're put into our system at date and time stamps, their visit to the building. That's important for accountability. We want to make sure that we know who's at our buildings and when they leave our buildings. And accountability, that falls back to our first responders. If we have to evacuate the building for any reason, they want to know who's in there and who's not in there. That way, they know for search efforts where they have to go into the buildings or who they have to look for or how many people. It also does an instantaneous sex offender check. So this will check the sex offender registry for all of our states to make sure that the person, again, is appropriate to come into our building. In addition, there's some unwanted visitor registry files. So if the school gets information regarding a parent or a guardian or whoever who may not be able to pick up that child for some reason, or maybe a court order in effect or something, they're able to put that into the system, and the visitor management person can look that up ahead of time, and they can alert the principal or whoever else, the school resource officer or security guards, as to what they find. We've received some excellent reviews from people, parents about this. They like the idea. They like the idea that we're vetting people and we're checking them, and that we're able to account for them. Communications. We have upgraded our radio system to a digital system, state-of-the-art. We've increased the number of radios in our buildings. Administrators need those, our school resource officers. Going out for gym, going out for recess, in the lunchrooms, our paraprofessionals who are one-on-one with some students. There's a lot of uses for these. So we've upgraded, I think we're at about approximately 390 radios for the district. It's a lot of equipment. A lot of equipment. Each school is able to talk within their school, and then we're also able to talk district-wide with some of the radios who are programmed with an emergency channel. So the emergency channel allows all stakeholders, think back now, police, fire, health, student transportation, and our schools, central office, our dispatch center. During an emergency, we can communicate via radio if we have to. That's huge. If you read any after-action reviews for any major incident, communications is the first breakdown, especially interoperability communications between different groups, different agencies. So if you think about it, if you look up here, I apologize for blocking it. Each school communicates, and I say within its own bubble, within its own circle. So Live Oaks cannot talk to Pumpkin Delight. Pumpkin Delight can't talk to Foreign. Foreign can't talk to West Shore Middle School. Does that make sense? Everyone with me so far? Okay. So this is the individual school radio systems. Now, if we go to the district-wide, well now, central office, police and fire dispatch center, health department, Durham bus. You can see how the arrows start to go. Now, everyone can communicate. I can make it messier and just make lines all over the place because everyone can talk to each other. But you get the point with this. Everyone can talk. So if our phones went down, we had no other way to communicate, we have our radios. This is huge and this is key for us in our response and recovery efforts. Video surveillance. We have video surveillance in all 14 schools. We've upgraded the cameras through the grant process and through the other funding. Again, this is huge. This allows, we have access with our first responders, so they're allowed to look at our cameras during an emergency. So in addition, when I go back to that scenario about the dispatchers, floor plans, being able to guide them to the proper doors, well now they can put on the cameras and actually get a bird's eye view of what's going on in that building during an emergency. And as it says on the bottom, we've increased the number of cameras in our buildings. I think we're somewhere roughly around 600 cameras at this point in the district. Some of the medical equipment we have, through generous donations of some of the civic groups here within the city of Milford, we've been able to put an AED in each school building. So now every school has one. And these are key to saving people's lives. They're public access. Anyone can use one of these. It gives you directions. It gives you an audio. You connect the device to someone. If they're not in cardiac arrest, it's not going to provide a shock to them. The machine does the work. Just people have to walk through it. So these are fully accessible. Our nurses and our facilities staff oversee the maintenance of these. They check them weekly for certain things and monthly for others. And they report back to our fire department, who oversees any maintenance issues we might have with those. Our Go Kits. I mentioned before, evacuations from buildings is a good example. So a school evacuates. They need to take out something that's going to help that incident management team I spoke of earlier to help them contain that scene and sustain that scene until the first responders get there. So there's critical stuff in there for communications, sectioning off areas. Most importantly, accountability of students and staff. We want to know everyone's making it out of the building, and they're at their recovery points. So these kids are priceless, and the staff use these when they do all their drills. In addition, they have emergency vests. I go back to the IDs before. First responders come on the scene, they're not going to know who an employee is unless they're properly identified. So we have incident management vests within the bag. So they're able to put those on and identifies them as school staff and identifies them as the critical staff. You know, a police officer shows up, they want to know who the principal is, they want to know who the incident management team members are so they can work with them directly. So we're able to identify those people and with the use of these kits in the vests. So our partnerships. This is something I think we pride ourselves on most here in the city of Milford. I've gone to a lot of trainings and a lot of seminars and talked with colleagues from different districts, and they don't have what Milford has as far as partnerships. We have a great working relationship with our fire department, our police department, our health department. It's second to none with how we communicate with each other and work so well together. So up here we have all of our partners, and we have a common goal, and everyone's committed to that common goal of making sure that we have safe environments for our students and our staffs and our visitors. The fire department provides us with, again, annual fire inspections, fire code compliance. They give us guidance where we need it. They also assist with overseeing the evacuation packets we do and the maps. We were able to have a person in our facilities department this year revise all of the fire evacuation maps in our school buildings. Now we have it computer generated, so we can change these. For example, West Shore Middle School has a renovation project going on now. We're able to change those plans based on egress changes and construction that's going on in the building. Very effective. So with this, I'm going to turn over the presentation to Sergeant Del Monte to talk a little bit about the School Resource Officer Program and the value it has in our school system.
Thanks, Jeff. Hi, everybody. Those of you that don't know me or remember me, I'm the sergeant of the Special Investigations Unit at the Police Department. I was the SRO at West Shore in the Academy for the first 3 years of the program. So I'm underneath the leadership of Captain Brandon Marshman, who cannot join us tonight, but he is the main supervisor that I report to for the School Resource Officer Program. Just some introductions. We have some of the SROs present here tonight. SRO Pat Taylor from Joseph A. Foreign High School. SRO Matt Goldfuss could not be here, but he is from Jonathan Law. Jonathan Law's representation is here anyway. SRO Emily Mills represents Harborside and East Shore. Nikki Bova is West Shore in the Academy. Karen Banks is one of our substitutes, and one of our other substitutes, we have two now, is Officer Katie Bruno. She also could not be here with us tonight. So the role of the School Resource Officer, be a visible, positive, proactive member of your school community. We're not there to arrest the kids. That's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to be proactive and approachable so that a kid can come to us, any one of the students can come to us during the school day with an issue that may be originating in school, in the community, or at home. We strive to create a safer school environment. As Jeff said, our goal here is safety. We're the front line for you guys if need be. We are also representation to work with your school administrators on crisis planning and evacuation drills. We act as a liaison between the police department, the Board of Education, and community programs. By that I mean the Boys and Girls Club, Milford Youth and Family, Bridges, Clifford Beers, agencies like that. And we perform the critical functions of a law enforcement officer, teacher, and informal counselor. Those three things at the bottom there highlight what's called the School Resource Officer Triad of Responsibility. So when we went through training, we were told, you must, and they hammered it into us, represent these three things with excellence in class. So the training for us, we are nationally certified through the National Association of School Resource Officers. We also attended crime prevention through environmental design, the SEPTED training, which Jeff alluded to earlier. Basically, in short, it's when we're able to assess the physical site, the building, traffic flow, student foot traffic, how we make our building safer and more efficient. We hand in those evaluations every year to, I believe we're going to hand them in to you. We do a short little presentation to accompany them as a summary, and we make sure they're done every year. Active shooter preparedness and response, building threat assessments, and your school faculty also helps with classes that we've attended, such as autism awareness, mental health first aid, and their PMT, the physical restraint training, And we've also attended juvenile legal updates because some of our laws changed come January 1st, 2017. I think you drained the battery now. Good. Positive interactions with students. As I said before, present, visible, and accessible. We're there in the school all day. We are approachable during the day and also after hours. Students have our email address. They can reach us through the police department. We tell them all the time, if you have an issue and you really need to speak to us, call headquarters. They will call us, which has been done before, and we will make sure we get back to you or get you the help that you need. Serve as a positive role model while establishing trusted relationships and counseling. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And build trust and rapport, encouraging students to report issues on a more frequent basis. We build such close relationships with some of these students that they come to us with everything. Everything. Which is great, because some things may go unheard of had we not formed that relationship with them in the first place. We can serve as guest speakers in classrooms. SROs have lesson plans in several different subjects: family and dating violence, internet safety, driving laws, things like that. We can serve as an information resource for faculty and staff, and we can improve upon the existing building emergency plans. Partnerships. Our partnerships, along with everybody in the Board of Ed. I said before, Milford Youth and Family Services we work very closely with. My office in the Detective Bureau at the Police Department just, I guess, reinvented, so to speak, the juvenile diversion program, which should a juvenile get arrested, they are diverted through the court process and they attend a program with myself and Milford Youth and Family, so that hopefully it's more of a restorative approach for that student. Milford Prevention Council, Bridges Mental Health, Clifford Beers, Emergency Mobile Psychiatric Services, DCF, and the Boys and Girls Club, just to name a few.
Thank you, sir. You're welcome. So, I can tell you the value of the SRO program. If you're going to see it, go walk the Connecticut Post Mall on a Friday or Saturday night when the officers work private duty there, and you'll see the kids approach them, and they give these guys hugs, high fives. That's a bond that you're not going to get anywhere else. They do a great job in our schools, and I think that shows the true value of what they do. Just with closing of the presentation, there's a quote here. I'd just like to read it off the screen to you. It is, "This job of keeping our children safe and teaching them well is something we can only do together with the help of friends and neighbors, the help of the community, and the help of the nation." So that's very powerful, and if you think about that, think about the words in there. There's key words. Working together, the help of others. We can't do it alone as a school district. You know, the collaboration we have with our first responders, with our student transportation services, it's all key. Everything I spoke of here, if you can think of it, it all blends together, it all meshes with the work we do together, with the manual we have, the emergency operations plan, with the training, with the assessments, with the committees, the incident management teams. Everything works well to create a good framework so we provide a safer and secure environment for our students here. So that's all I have for the presentation. I'd like to thank you, and if you have any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Jagodzinski?
The school-based committees, teachers are on those committees?
Yes.
Are teachers taken out of the classrooms for those meetings?
They, I believe, have a...
After school.
Okay. Or before school. How many major incidents do we actually have a year?
That, I do not have a number on major incidents. I'm
going
to say very few.
Major incident.
Pardon?
What would you classify as a major incident?
One that would be brought to the district safety and security group.
I would say maybe under 4, maybe even under 3. We do a pretty good job of again, prevention is key. So a lot of things we do, we have a lot of preventative measures in place. So incidents don't get to where they would be in the first place. Things don't have a chance to escalate because of the measures we have in place and because of the relationships and the resources that we do have. That helps you out with that question.
Do the officers have body cameras?
Yes, they do.
And what are the cameras on all the time, or when are they on?
No, the cameras are not on all the time. They will be turned on if the law enforcement officer in the school is effecting a law enforcement purpose. So if they are in an administrative meeting, they're not on. If they are in a student counseling session, they're not on. If they are called to a fight in the cafeteria, they'll turn them on. Issue with the parent or anything like that, they may turn them on. But they'll have to use common sense as far as that goes, but they're not on all the time because of the sensitive information within your schools.
You said that there is annual training for the staff.
Yes.
Various forms. Do you have a feel for how much time the training takes on an annual basis?
We do a video which runs about 17 minutes, then we do a question and answers after that. And then we also do a in-person with all our new staff, which is quite longer than that. But also in addition to that, between our drills we do frequently in the buildings, and then we go out to some of the after-school meetings and meet with some of the administrators if they have an issue that may arise in regards to teachers need more familiarity with a particular type of action within the action guide, then we do that as well.
And how many security guards do we have at the high schools?
We have 2 in each school.
And where are they? Are they stationed at specific locations or?
In the buildings, you mean?
Right.
Usually I have one that works at the front desk, so that person is the greeter, and the other one usually does patrols around the campus and the floor.
Other questions? Mr. Wiskiment, did I see you had a question?
Does OSHA do inspections of our buildings for work safety? Do you know?
Question, I'd probably defer to Pat Bradbury for facilities.
Well, I was wondering if they did, if you incorporated any of their findings or reports within your school safety, because there could be work safety issues that could arise from their inspections that might be of value to you as you, evaluate our situations, because, they'll walk into a cafeteria, there may be open flames, they do boiler inspections or whatever, et cetera, and they may spot things that may be of interest to your work.
Yes.
If I could answer that one, I'll speak for Pat Bradbury, although he would elaborate much more than I will.
I'm sure he would.
We meet all OSHA standards.
Right.
We also, all of our facilities, employees, as well as other employees, get OSHA training that's required by law every year. From time to time, OSHA may do an inspection. It's rare. Obviously, if there's an incident, they will come in. And if we've had incidences, far and few between, but we have had major incidences where OSHA has come in. But there's no scheduled OSHA.
Well, I was just thinking, because nothing was said in the presentation, so it just struck me as I thought that if there is information that is coming from that source, it might prove of value to incorporate that information within the work that you're doing to make sure that anything they spot is taken care of and thought about as part of your planning.
Yep. And that's KERMA is our insurer for workers' compensation. And they give us information, a tremendous amount of information for safety training and things like that that's brought to all 14 of the occupational safety committees that are in the school, and then it goes back to a district-wide safety committee.
That's fine. It was just I just saw a possibility of another source of information that might prove of value as you consider, managing the process.
Yes, that's a good point, and I think just going back to what I said before, the makeup of our district working group, that's why facilities is on board. They bring that to the table for us. So again, having that resource, I will.
Thank you.
Dr. Gregory?
On slide 18, it says the safety and security video surveillance is accessible to first responders during emergencies.
Yes.
I don't remember, Madam Chair, is this in our new policy? Is this referred to on our policy on video surveillance? I don't remember, so, it doesn't have to be answered now, but it just, the access, I just want to make sure that this is aligned with our policies and maybe.
We can check. I think it is, but we'll double check.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Other questions? Mr. DeGrego?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. That was a great presentation. 2 weeks ago, I was invited by Law High School to to do a fingerprinting demonstration for 2 days, being a retired criminal investigative unit detective. And I want to say I was able to talk to Officer Goldfuss, and with his supervisor right here, I found him very professional, courteous, attentive, but most of all committed to his responsibility and detail. I watched him in action. I'm very proud of him. I think Sergeant Dalmonte, I'm sure you are too. What an asset to the system. And I'm familiar with Officer Taylor and Ms. Emmer and the rest, and I really am happy that we have very top shelf people working in this program. I just want to say thank you.
Other questions, comments? So I think it's important to acknowledge the depth of the changes that have been necessary in our schools in recent years, and certainly when we have presentations like this, it brings to light the degree of expertise and the number of personnel that come into play to keep our students safe, and I don't think we can underscore that enough. So just wanted to thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing us to present it.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the food service financial report and also the healthy food certification.
Hello.
I guess it's just
We're still here.
The important part.
The titillating conversation.
They just don't know what they're going to miss.
I know.
They're lost.
Exactly. Okay, so this is the financial report for the food service program for July 1, 2016 through January 31st, 2017. It's basically half the way through the year. We're doing okay. We're a little bit down in our sales. It's not an exciting, dazzling spreadsheet or anything, but it just basically shows our income from our sales to students, our federal reimbursement and our state reimbursements. So we're holding our own, but we are a little bit down, a few meals a day. And so we've been trying to figure out some things that we could do to improve that or see why why we're down. I know we're down slightly in enrollment, but we're just constantly looking at the numbers to see what we can do to improve. I don't anticipate a loss by the end of the year, so I think we're in good financial shape. You may notice that there's some things in the news as administrations have changed. So federally, there may be some proposals to pull back on some of the federal regulations that those of you that have been here quite a while, like we've been changing for the past 7 years in response to the 2010 legislation, and they're proposing to roll those back. But I honestly don't know what that's going to be. They can put out a proposal. I would hope that they would not just turn it back to no regulations, because I think we've made a lot of good progress with nutrition standards nationally. I think what's good for kids is healthy meals with fruits and vegetables, whole grains. I think that what we've done can make a difference, and it has made a difference. So I wouldn't want to see that turned back, but it is proposals. What I might be more concerned about is if they were to decrease funding. That would be something that I would be actually I'm concerned with both, but funding-wise, since this is the financial report, that would be something that we'd have to keep an eye on to see if there are any reductions in funding, because we rely on reimbursements at the federal level and the state level. Does anyone have any questions?
We still have we still have our Connecticut guidelines, correct, which I think you're going to talk about next.
Yes,
which
that's next. Yes, we still have that.
Any questions? Mrs. Federico?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You said you were trying to figure out what was going on in terms of being down a few meals. I'm just curious, have you ever tried surveys or considered that?
Yes, we are actually working on one for just West Shore. I was just in particular looking at breaking it down by school and by status is what I was really looking at. So I was getting a little bit too much into the numbers. But yeah, we're going to do a survey actually at West Shore, but maybe do it more broadly. We kind of go by what sells, because it gives us immediate feedback. And the kids are very vocal if something is good or bad. So that's the kind of feedback. But it would help. I think your suggestion is good to do a survey. But we are doing a survey this week on smoothies, because we started to do smoothies at the West Shore.
Okay.
And we were sold out on the first day.
I heard about the smoothies.
Okay. Oh, good. Okay.
Didn't a parent contact you wanting the recipe?
I did, the next day, because we had given out samples last week to every student at lunchtime. We gave a little sample. And then the next day, a parent called, so I was excited their middle school student actually went home and told them they had something good at school. Right? Like, they don't always share that with us, right? So I was really happy about that. And then, and I'm also getting some help for the past week, and till the end of this week, I have an intern from St. Joseph's University, a dietetic intern. So I put him on this project of, if we put smoothies into the middle school, how do we do it? How do we get enough made? How do we meet the guidelines? How do we do this? It gives him the whole experience. So after just 3 days, the kids call him the smoothie guy. So it's pretty funny how they know something's different right away. So hopefully we'll be doing a few other things like that to the other schools as well.
Okay, and then actually a second question. If guidelines are rolled back, there's no reason we couldn't still choose to stay with healthier options, correct?
Well, the guidelines that they're talking about at the federal level is rolling back meal standards. So what is included in the meals.
Okay.
So snacks, although that is part of the federal guidance too, I guess they could roll back everything. We really don't know what's
No, I understand. Hard to say what they would do. I'm just thinking about how we would respond if there would be anything that would force us to change.
I still would want to provide the healthiest meals, because I really do think it is a good, solid, nutritional meal that we put forth. I would, personally, I would not go any further with sodium and like little things like that, but I don't think we would want to roll back everything. We maybe we could roll back something that would save us some money, like making the students take a fruit or vegetable with every meal. But it's so complex. We really have to think about it.
But if they rolled back, couldn't some of your federal subsidy be reduced?
Well, I think that's where the direction that it would be going. Like,
so the impact would be the money that...
Right, if you take the regulations away, then they can take funding away. They gave us, back in 2012, they gave us an extra 6 cents, so
the funding is what helps you to be able to provide those healthier foods, because healthier foods tend to cost more money.
All our reimbursements, whether it's federal or state, help, and we count pennies for our program. Like the healthy food certification, that's 10 cents per meal. We have, it's 6 cents per meal for this, when they changed the regulations in 2012. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but it does add up.
Sure.
So when they say they're going to cut, like we don't want something that would turn it into a block grant, something that would limit it. We want it by meal, by the number of students that we sell, so it can fluctuate based on who we're serving and the numbers we're serving.
Okay, thank you. That's clear.
Do you know our program is self-sufficient, so the Board of Education budget does not supplement your.
No.
Do you know if most communities are like that in Connecticut, or if it varies greatly?
No, I think most are. Most are.
Questions on the federal portion of the presentation?
The next part, excuse me, is on the healthy food certification. And this is something that the board annually votes on to participate. And 95 or something like that % of the districts in Connecticut participate in this. And this is where, by following the healthy food certification guidelines for a la carte items, snack items that we sell, we get 10 cents per meal based on the number of meals we served last year. So I think it's a good thing, and it has been a good thing for Connecticut. We've had it in place, I believe, around 10 years, and Milford's participated for the past 5. And I think it is a good thing for the student nutrition. And so it makes it a better environment. You have the kids eating healthier food, and it financially benefits our program. So you can vote on the participation in this, and then you can also exempt events such as football games or basketball games or plays, something like that, where you don't have to follow the healthy food certification guidance.
So this is the board members, this would be your second year, new board members, of doing this. Does anybody need further explanation of what it is that we're going to vote on? Okay. Do you have anything else to share, or are you ready for us to vote?
I'm ready for you to vote.
Are there any questions for Mrs. Faustich on this? All right, Mrs. Bias?
Okay. I make a motion that the Milford Board of Education will participate in the healthy food certification and certify that all food items offered for sale to students in the schools under our jurisdiction and not exempt from the Connecticut nutrition standards published by the Connecticut State Department of Education will meet said standards during the period from July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2018. Such certification shall include all food offered for sale to students separately from reimbursable meals at all times and from all sources, including but not limited to school stores, vending machines, school cafeteria, and any fundraising activities on school premises, whether or not school sponsored.
Your second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And the second motion?
Okay, I make a motion that the Milford Board of Education will exclude from certification food items that do not meet the Connecticut nutrition standards, provided that 1, such food is sold in connection with an event occurring after the end of the regular school day or on the weekend. 2, such sale is at the location of the event. And 3, such food is not sold from a vending machine or a school store.
Is there second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Next Generation Accountability Report, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Burt.
All right, good evening.
Hello.
How's everyone doing?
Okay.
So as you may recall, last year the state came out with a new report to help us understand how each district and each school is doing. It's called the Next Generation Accountability Report. And hopefully does everybody have a copy of our district report? It's also difficult to read, and when I put it up on the screen it's going to be difficult to read, but I'm going to try to zoom in there. Everyone should have, it's the same thing as well as a copy of the PowerPoint.
Was it the same as the one that was in
It
our
was
package?
one, I just wanted to make sure in
It's a
case you
little
didn't bring
bigger.
your board packet. So
Oh,
if you have your
it's
board
not any
packet, you're all
different.
set.
Okay.
Did everybody have? Yep. Okay, so just to remind everyone where we came from, this is our report from 2012 and 2013. And if you look at the description, in essence, we used to have something called a DPI, a District Performance Index, or an SPI, a School Performance Index, and primarily that was based on the percentage of students at goal. The CMT and the CAP used to have 5 performance levels. You needed to be proficient was level 3, level 4 was goal, and that was it. That was the only indicator of success for a school district. The state, as they moved to away from our state assessments to the Smarter Balanced assessment, began to look at the way in which they reported out on the success of each individual school in the district, and they began to move in this direction. They asked for a lot of input. I remember going to a conference right around this time, 2012, 2013, in which the state was presenting some of these indicators, and we were giving them feedback right within that conference, as well as throughout a variety of meetings throughout the state. So again, this is going to be very, very busy looking. I just wanted to give you an overview. You have the indicators in front of you. What I'm going to do tonight is break down into each one of the individual indicators and give you a sense of how they develop each of the scores that are there. The first column, what you want to look for is the index rate. That is the actual calculated score for each one of those individual indices. So I'll go through each one of those things. One thing I do want to point out, however, is that this state really has moved to a growth model. And if you recall our presentation from 2 weeks ago, it was all about that growth index. It was about how are we moving each student, are they making their individual target, are they growing, what percentage are they making of that target, etc. This is the same thing. They've moved entirely away from the number of students or the percentage of students that just met a single benchmark. In essence, this covers all students, regardless of their achievement, which is a significant shift for the state. So when we look at this, this covers all of our students in district, and I'll explain that as I go through each indicator. Please feel free to stop me as I go through because it's going to get a little bit complicated. First, I'm going to draw your attention to indicator number 1. These are the state assessments. You'll see 1, A and B are ELA, C and D are math, E and F are science. This is based on Smarter Balanced for ELA math, grades 3 through 8, SAT, grade 11. In science, we are still using the CMT, grades 5 and 8, and the CAT in grade 10. Just as a reminder, the state is moving away from this assessment for science, and will be, the word on the street is that we should be getting something in the year 2018, 2019, for a new science exam that is aligned to the new standards. Okay? Any questions on that? All right. So as we take a look at these standards, the first thing I'm going to draw your attention to is the index of the rate. And again, as I stated before, the rate is based on all students on their scale scores. Again, that's all students who took the SAT, took the CMT, or CAP Science, or took the Smarter Balance. This is not based on the students that scored at goal. As a reminder, we went from 5 levels, CMT and CAP, to 4 levels. And the goal on the Smarter Balance is 3. Okay? So what do we do with this? Basically, we were given a target by the state, and just so you know, last year when I gave this presentation, I've heard that perhaps the target would change based on your individual district score. In essence, the target is the same for the entire state. So regardless of what district you're in, this is the target that you're looking for, and that determines what your actual percentage points are then. I'm going to walk through one of these examples to give you how we get from the right-hand side to the left-hand side. Yes?
Yes, Mr. Jakuzinski.
I don't understand this index rate. You're saying it's based on all students as opposed to some subset of students? I have no idea what that means.
Okay. So let me pause and rewind a little bit. So in that prior example that was on that first page, our score was based on the percentage of kids who made it to goal. Okay, so in this case, it was say 80% of kids made goal in 3rd grade. That was your score. We didn't, in essence, count those 20%. This is a different take. This is to say that, let's say we had 3,000 students that took our ELA assessment in grades 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8. Every one of their individual scores is now calculated into this rate here.
So is it 71.2% that performed at level
I'm going to walk through how we get to that because it's not as simple as saying, no, it's not.
Okay, I'm just asking the question because I think that's what you're asking.
Right. So we do get reports in the fall. Excellent question. We do get reports in the fall that say, of our fourth graders, this is the percentage of students that are at goal. And as you recall in our data profile back in September, I went through each one of those for our grades, for math and ELA. Are we seeing the percentage of students at goal either staying the same or increasing? We did a little cohort analysis. How did students do when they moved from 4th to 5th grade? That data in the fall was the percentage of students that have met that benchmark of 3. We did the same thing for the SAT. What percentage of students made the benchmark of 490 for ELA and 530 for math? And we gave those cut scores to the board in a previous presentation. This report card is using a different method to report out. So we are going to have both of those methods to help judge how well the district is doing. We're going to have that cut score that come out fairly quickly after the Smarter Balance in the fall. And then we get this index report, which comes out after they do some more calculations to give us a bigger picture of the district. So there's 2 different reports. We report out both of them to give you a picture of how well the district is doing.
So looking at 1A and 1B, 1A is all students, and that 71.2, however that number is achieved, is there. But the high needs students, that's 60.8. That's a smaller group, but that's also included in the number above.
Correct.
Which means it would bring, however, that number down.
Correct.
Okay.
I was going to go through this a little bit later, but I can address that now. You'll see 1A and 1B, it's the same assessment. So 4th graders who took the reading assessment on the Smarter Balance, the state then pulls out a subgroup called high needs. The high needs include students who have special needs, the students that are eligible for free and reduced lunch, and our students who are ELL. That is grouped into one subgroup called high needs group. In previous iterations of a report card, the state would pull out each one of those individual groups. And the decision was made that there's a lot of overlap with those groups, and especially in certain districts, that they decided that it'd be better to have them all count into one group. But as you pointed out, it's not non-high need students and high need students, it's everybody and then this small group. And a little bit later, there's a calculation that shows whether or not there's a significant gap there based on state standards. So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
So this 71.2, does that mean as a composite, 71% of our students met the goal?
No, as I said, that was the report that I gave in the fall. That's a cut score, and we said, as you may recall, we said we're seeing some gains in 3rd and 4th grade in ELA. We saw a dip in 5th grade in math, and that's something that we're going to pay close attention to, as well as 8th grade. We also, in the growth index, that was 2 weeks ago, that was on individual scores for students growing. I got a 100 and my target was 150. Did I make that? Yes or no? Did I grow 140 points? Do I get credit for that? That's a growth model. So the state's presenting us with this data in a lot of different ways. And we're going to use all of those to help us give some insight into both how our individual students are doing, how our grades are doing, how our schools are doing, and how the district is doing. It's two pictures using the same data. Before, it's the cut score, how are we doing based on kids reaching the goal, and this is another report saying how are all kids doing. And I do have a formula to show you how to walk through to get to this index.
So I was going to, you have a note there that the rate is based on all tested students' scale scores. So what's the scale score? Is that what's coming?
It's coming.
Okay.
It's good. We're going to get there. All right. So this is, I'm just going to walk back to my previous statement. This is the scores we get in September. These are the achievement scores. These are the percentage of students. As you remember, I gave you the bar graph. How many students were at goal? That's essentially these are. For SBA, it's level 3 or above. There's only 4 levels. And for the SAT, as I stated earlier, it's 490 and 530. So that's the report in the fall. This now we're moving into this index rate, which the state has created for us. As you asked, it is based on all students' scale scores. And I try to simplify this as much as possible because it's not the easiest thing to understand. And just to give you the reason why, and when I spoke to the representative from the state, It says that this is a more accurate measure of all students. You can imagine if you simply have that cut score, that there are ways to target a certain amount of students that are on the cusp and increase that score year over year. In other words, the students that scored just below, let's go say 490 in the ELA for the SAT, you could target a small group of students and increase your achievement and make it look better for the overall number. If you really want a true judgment of how well your district is doing, you should give an image of all students in your district. Are you moving all students? As the report said 2 weeks ago, that growth model was indicated on how all students are growing. Did everyone make their target, regardless of where you started, which is what we're about. We want all students to achieve. We don't want to just target students that might achieve or get to a certain score, so ultimately we look better in a report. The other indication of what they want to do is they're claiming that this gives us more of an accurate comparison over time. Again, this is from the state, and I'm exploring how they interpret that further as we go to some more conferences with them. So here we go. Here's my example. I'm not promising anything. 5th grade student takes an ELA test. The score, it's a 500. So most people are familiar with the SAT, right? What's the score there? What's the scale score there?
800.
800, what's the bottom?
200.
So what's the range there?
600.
600, okay? So that's a vertical scale, 200 to 800. In this case, for 5th grade ELA, I picked the one that was simplest because it was 500. It was a nice round number. Some of them are not nice and round. So 500 scale points in the scale, instead of 200 to 800, it's 2201 to 2701. Okay, so think SAT. All right, 500 scale points instead of 600. In this case, student 1 scored 2501. For those of you that did that math very quickly, that was 300 points out of that range. Okay? So in terms of the achievement score, this would not put them into reaching their goal. Okay? They would not be counted for us as being at goal level. Okay? But they're still going to count it towards this report. So we got to do a little bit more math. We divide that. So 300 divided by 500 is 0.6. And the state has said we're going to give some extra credit for students that are achieving higher. So instead of timesing that, multiplying that 0.6 by 100, it's 110. So it's a little bit of a 10-point curve. What do I mean by that? If we roughly took this as a percentage, it would be 60%. But in this case, they're adding 10%, so it's 66. Yes?
How does the state decide which students you can multiply by 100 and which students you...
Every student gets 110.
Every student gets 110.
So if it's a 0.1 or a 1.0, you get 110. Now, the thing that I pointed out to the state that I'm still exploring with them, if I'm down in the 0.1 range, my score is 11. I only get a 1-point adjustment. If I had 100 or a 1.0, I get 10 points of adjustment on that because I get 110. So you take 1 times 110, you get an extra 10 points. But if I'm lower in the scale, I don't get as much. And so I'm still talking to the state about why they made that decision. How did they make this adjustment? Why the curve, if you will? But they're claiming that as students increase in their achievement, they want to give extra credit for that to those students.
What happens if they're above 500?
You can't. It's you can't get
110
850 on the SAT. You can't get, so it's
okay.
It's,
So
it's within their scale.
Oh, okay.
So again, 200, 800, you can't get a 190 or an 850.
Okay, so 110 is the maximum.
Correct. And 0 is the bottom.
And so then they add all, or am I moving ahead?
And then they average everybody's together. So they do this for every student. So you can see that if you have a number of students that are much, much lower, that's going to pull all of your scores down. But if you start moving students, again, this is why the state is claiming that this will show us greater growth, because we're showing all students. If we pay attention to all kids, and our theory, our belief is that all students can grow, then we should see progress in all these indicators. And then if we couple that with the report I gave you 2 weeks ago about student growth, then we should see that. And then ultimately, this should show us the cut scores, the percentage of students going up there for the cut scores. So it should all work together, especially if we pay attention to all kids. All right. So again, that gives us the index rate if we average them all together. If you pull out your high needs students, it gives them. Just some final math there to get you to that final column. In this case, we take 71.2, we divide it by the target. It gets you 0.949, and we times that by 100, multiply that by 100, and we get 94.9%. So if you look at the top row 1A, going across, you divide these, and that gives you the weighted points, but your overall percentage average at the end there. Okay? All right. I'm going to take your silence. As a reminder, the high needs students. So I've lulled you into submission. Excellent. So I'm going to move on now to indicator 2. You may or may not recall this didn't exist last year because we didn't have the growth model. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I spent a lot of time on this last time we met. So again, but this is a percentage of growth target achieved is based on the growth model adopted by the Connecticut State Department of Education. And again, if I had a target of 150, I got 140 points. I didn't meet my target, but I still made a lot of progress. So that's what this number does. We want to see this, ultimately, we want to see this at 100%. We want to see all students reaching their target, regardless of their starting point, because even if you're at level 1 in achievement, you should be making your target. So that's our goal, is to start moving these numbers closer to 100. As you can see, the target is 100, and if you look at your scores, if you look down max points, indicator 1, which is again every student, that's 50 points. I'm sorry, the performance index is 50 points. The growth model, which we discussed last year, is 100 points. So the state's telling us that this is what they consider to be the most significant. And again, just so you know, all students count towards this indicator. There are no missing students in any of these cases. Okay? Moving into chronic absenteeism, then we moved away from student achievement and we moved into this area in terms of attendance. And the data shows, the research shows that if students aren't in school, I know this is surprising, if they're not in school, they may not learn as much. I know that's a shock to everybody. Okay, in this case, chronic absenteeism means more than 10%. In our case, it'd be over 18 absences, indicates chronic. You want a lower percentage here. Okay, the state indicates that we have a unequal to or less than 5% of our students is our goal. You can see also they separate out the high need students in this case as well. Anything above that 5% is counted against us. In this case, we're at 7.3 for all students, which is 2.3 more than 5. And very simply put, you double that, it gets you 4.6, and then you subtract it from 50. So that gives us that indicator, and then you can double that for a percentage. Ideally, though, we want to keep bringing these numbers down, especially when we look at high need students. That's an area of concern for us. We definitely want to target that and bring those numbers down to 5%. Yes?
Does it count against you in both categories, all students and high needs, if they're ever?
That's a great question. In all these cases, if you look down at the bottom under points earned, they're all total. So any one of these individual categories is totaled at the bottom, so they all count.
So you're kind of getting, yeah, I guess, so you're kind of getting counted against twice, because the high needs students obviously is 13.6, and it's pulling down the all students, so you're getting.
Correct. There are districts, though, that this number is significantly higher than all students, which is another reason why the state says it's something they want to pull out and make sure that is.
That's almost double. Well,
in this case, this is something that we want to pay attention to and work on. Yes.
Yeah, speaking of that, this was the one number that was very much troubling me. I'm wondering what plans are in place for dealing with addressing the high need students' chronic absenteeism.
This is an excellent question. We have a plan for all of our students, and as you know, in our budget, one of the things we have is the truancy liaison. I think we moved away from officer, who's going to establish relationships with students who begin to show chronic absenteeism early on. We know that having a friendly face and having some contact with in the school, someone that they feel safe with, is important to that. Also, to have have early interventions One of the other pieces that we're working on is the school climate piece with mindfulness, making sure that students are welcome, also that they feel like they have an adult they can speak to in the building. A lot of this also at the high school level is just, I know that both high school principals, they have, especially with freshmen, they speak to individual students, they call them themselves. If they're coming in late on a regular basis, they will have them come in and have a conversation with them, not a gotcha, a punitive one, but just also try to establish those relationships. Also, our SROs are part of this process to establish relationships with students. As you said, outside of school, they often see students, for instance, in the mall. So it's a multi-pronged approach, but it is something that each building has to pay attention to, and we're looking at this depending on building as well.
Again, the high-need students, it's free and reduced lunch, English as a second language, and
students with disabilities.
Do we know the 13.6 is it one group higher than the other? Is it students with disabilities? Is it?
That is something that we can disaggregate, but that's nothing that we would publicize at this point.
Right.
The issue is if we get under a certain number, we're not supposed to report that out. So if we get into smaller populations, which is the other reason they created the super group, is because in many cases in smaller districts, those numbers were so low.
I'm just wondering for our own within.
Absolutely, there's something
that you can know and then target that, or I don't know, but work with that group more.
I'll go to the next level down. It's not even just groups of students, it's the individual students. Making those connections to individual students. It just, if there's a high need, if there's an issue in your building of these numbers, then you should be making connections to individual students.
There's also a district truancy committee where a student is missing, hits that threshold of 18 days. There's a committee that's monitoring student attendance K through 12, and this is where the individual piece comes in. So an individual names, and that committee meets, and they're looking at what has been done and put a plan in place for pursuing the student, et cetera. So, and that's formalized, that committee in the district.
Is absence, if it's a student that has medical needs and is out for illness, is that number counted in there?
Yeah. Yes. So there's some of these which we cannot adjust. We do have medically fragile students, for instance, that we would not bring into a school. So it's one of the things that we couldn't address.
So I just want to remind the board too that we do have the kindergarten study ongoing right now, that working from the bottom up that's on chronic absenteeism specifically, correct, or just absenteeism in general at the kindergarten level?
It's on absenteeism, but obviously, quite honestly, we have issues of chronic absenteeism with kindergartners, which is a problem. And the board's going to hear about that.
Correct, yeah, we're going to have a report on that later in the year. But I had actually pulled out last year's report, and we've actually gone down on both of. Do you have that?
I have a summary at the end. Yeah.
I'll be quiet then.
Feeling the thunder, but that's
yes, Mrs.
Go. Just curious on the absenteeism. Do we know if it's any specific grade level, elementary, middle, high school?
It depends. Sometimes it depends upon building, but we can tell you the transition years, in particular, kindergarten, 6th grade and 9th grade. So that's why we have the freshman teams at the high school level to ensure that there's that connection. A lot of times, students leaving middle school, when they go to the high schools, they feel as if they're in a big impersonal building. So part of that process is to ensure that there's welcoming faces, and there's a process in place to ensure that if no one falls through the cracks, as it were.
Just following up on the question about a student who is out because of fragility or medical reasons. If we're providing that student with some kind of alternative schooling at home or at the hospital or whatever, would they still be considered absent even though they're receiving services and education, but they're just off-site for some very valid reasons?
My answer is going to be that this is an iterative process for the state, and they're still working through some kinks. I have an issue with a later indicator. that I don't think we're getting fair credit on. So I don't think that they've finalized their metrics is my answer. And in some cases, yes. If they're counted in our records as not being in, the definition is, are they attending the school?
Right.
That's the definition of attendance.
I think that the issue on the part of the state, if I understand their description here, is that if we excuse kids for the for different absenteeism, and then you try and get a composite rate of that, it's so distorted because you have all these kids who are who are excused not for the kind of thing that you're talking about where there's a chronic illness, but whatever, they had the flu for 5 days, so that's excused, and whatever it may be. So that's why the state says for any reason, if you hit 18 days, 180, well, and that would be the same for us, 18.5 or whatever, then you're considered chronic. So the students that you're talking about, that would be the exception. It's not as if we'd have 50% of the kids.
I understand, but still, you have a sense of, that isn't the kind of measure that helps you understand if we genuinely have chronic absenteeism from students who would you expect to be.
It's true, but the percent that's listed here, it's not due to those students.
Okay.
In other words, whether the student is absent 18 days or 4 months, that's one student.
Wow.
So I think what the state is trying to do is to give real emphasis to the fact that we need to have kids in school.
Right.
And the issue of truancy and kids being out, et cetera. So.
And recall the total number is 6,000. So one case, in that case, may have a greater impact as we get into the high needs, but even there, it's 1 or 2 students wouldn't have a significant impact. Just to Dr. Fieser's point as well, is that the state a few years ago changed the definition because certain districts were gaming the system. A lot of excused absences weren't counting, so every single absent counts now. So it's regardless. So I
hear you.
It's an excused, unexcused, etc. Doctors know regardless. It counts. So you avoid that. So.
No exception.
Okay, moving on now to the next level of indicators 5 and 6. This is CCR, which is college and career ready. And I'll give you the quick definition for that. For indicator number 5, this is the percentage of students in grades 11 and 12 participating in at least one of the following during high school. So it's counting the kids in 11 and 12, but it can happen anywhere from 9th to 12th grade. AP, ECE, 2 courses. 2 courses in one of the 7 career technical education categories. For example, business education, 2 workplace experience or courses or internships in any areas. Again, we're trying to expand both of these last 2 areas. So that's the percentage of our students. In this case, it was 76. We were over the target. We got full credit for that. And we're going to increase the accessibility to that.
Just curious, can it be 1 AP course and 1 internship?
The second that came up, it came to my head, and I have the guideline right there, and I can pull that up for you at the end of the presentation. I believe it's you have to do Google questions, right? You have to do one of those. Yeah, I don't think you can cross over the category.
So it has to be 2 in AP or 2, okay.
And the ECE is the UConn program.
Correct. It's a dual enrollment, as they call it. I changed that to ECE for our purposes. We also have an enrollment program now with Goodwin College, I believe. Right?
No, Housatonic.
Housatonic, I'm sorry, with Housatonic. So that would count as well.
And it is 2 in a particular category, 2 in the AP, or 2 courses in one of the college, the technical areas, or 2 workplace experience courses. So it's not over the 3.
So then the actual credit on this for indicator number 6 is if did you meet your benchmark scores, and it is in one of these categories, the SAT, the ACT, AP, or IB, which we do not do. So in our case, predominantly it's SAT and AP. We do have some students taking ACT. This is one of those areas that I would want to see significant increase in as we pay more and more attention, especially to the SAT and our AP. So we anticipate this particular number to increase.
What's IB?
International Baccalaureate. A lot of schools, for instance, I used to teach in Westchester, we had an IB program. Typically competes with AP.
you have a question, Ms. Federico?
Oh, I did on the previous criteria. So it's grades 11 and 12 participating in at least one of the following. So does that mean a student taking an AP course in 10th grade, currently enrolled in one in 11th grade, would qualify?
Yes, at any point in their career.
Okay.
This says grade 11 and 12. The manual does.
Okay, my understanding was that it could be at any point in their high school career, so I could be wrong in that.
And that's why I was just curious if it's
Yeah.
2 AP in 1 year, or like I said, 1 in 10.
Yeah, I can follow up with that.
Okay.
All right, moving on now to 7, 8, 9, and 10. This is essentially about graduation. So the first indicator, number 7, this is the percentage of students on track to graduate. So in this case, the freshmen earning at least 5 credits, and they cannot fail in one of the 4 core areas, in essence. They can't get an F. So they have to get 5 credits to move on. The target here is 92%. We were very close to 92.4. And number 8, 4-year graduation. This is cohort. All students graduate in less than 4 years. So in this case, the percentage is 90.8. And typically, this is a year behind. This is 2015. So it was the previous year, so it's a year ago last June. This is a subgroup now, the 6-year graduation rate. This is for high needs students. This is going back to 2013 to track their graduation 2 years later. And again, it's a 6-year rate indicating that some students may need additional time to graduate, but still to give the district credit for that. And then number 10, just as it says post-secondary entrance, this is percentage of students who enroll in a 2 or 4-year college. Yes?
The 6-year graduation rate, high needs students, does that take into account students who may stay connected to the schools until they're eligible at 21, like for the length of time they're eligible? Like,
Special education
role does that
students?
play?
You mean special education students
Yes.
who might be in the transition program? That's my assumption. In fact, I think that's why the state finally moved to the 6-year graduation rate, because there was such pushback by superintendents when they came out with the 4-year graduation rate, and we said this makes no sense. If the law says that there are students who can stay until they're age 21, and we are obligated to educate the students, then why would we not give credit if students were then to earn the high school diploma?
Right. I'm just wondering, does the 6-year rate include that? Because at 21, that might be 7 years. I'm just wondering.
So it wouldn't include 7 years? It's
Yeah.
6 years?
No, I know.
Yep.
I'm just wondering, like.
Anything.
Did they go far enough?
It's also obtaining a diploma, which is another element of that within the 6 years.
Do it in 7 years, you get no credit.
And then again, with 8 and 9, you're including all those students, even the 6-year graduation rate and the 4-year graduation rate, correct?
Correct.
We wouldn't include them in the 4-year graduation rate.
Well,
you'd include them from the
it's all
perspective that they
students as
didn't
far as,
meet.
yeah, they would not count because that's part of the 10% who did not graduate
If they
within
came
the
in
4
at the
years.
same time. Because it's really when they come in as the 9th graders, 4 years later than how many graduate.
Right.
So it's supposed to be a true cohort of the children who started in 9th grade and graduating within the 4 years. But then the extension rate here is now, okay, what do we do with students that go past that? So, but it's only for the subgroup for high needs, correct?
Do our students identified with special education needs who are entitled till 21, are they encouraged to graduate in that 6-year time frame?
So here's the paradox, which we've also argued about. If we issue a diploma to a student at age 20, but they really should stay another year, they are automatically eliminated, removed from the school system at the state level. So you cannot officially give them the diploma until literally they are going to exit the system, which is a really frustrating thing, because it used to be that the state permitted us to classify students as postgraduate, which then you understood. No, they don't. So
that's always going to be an issue at that rate.
So ultimately, we want to do what's right for kids. So as opposed to the statistics. So we'll make that decision on a case-by-case basis. On to our last two indicators down at the bottom, 11 and 12. Physical fitness is it's now the third generation Connecticut Fitness Assessment, is administered to students in grades 4, 6, 8, and 10. The first indicator is broken into two columns. The first is the estimated participation rate, and then the other piece is the actual achievement rate on the test. This is one of those areas we actually had 2 schools get 0% for participation rate, which we find curious because we know that all our students participate in physical education on a regular basis. We had the same issue last year and we followed up with it, and we never really got a clear answer, so we will continue to pursue that. But if you're going through the individual schools, you may notice that, and 2 completely different schools than last year. So we have, in essentially what happens, you get 0 if you go below the 50% participation rate. One of the things that concerns me is, as Dr. Fies was reading through that, it says estimated participation rate. So how are they basing the estimation? So it's and how do they estimate one school at 80% and one school at 40%? So we're working with the state on that, just so you know. Arts access, this is the one that I have issues with. Again, this says percentage of students in grades 9 through 12 participating in at least one dance, theater, music, or visual arts course in that school year. We have a number of students that plan out their high school careers, and they say, I'm not going to take art this year, I'm going to take it next year. So why wouldn't this be an indication in my mind of, as you graduate as a senior, did you participate in at least one art access, or 2 even, come up with a number. But in this case, why pick a random year in which, some students are challenging themselves with various courses, and then they choose the next year they're going to challenge with different courses. It might include some of the fine arts, etc. So I found this one, and I did push back with the state a little bit on this one, and they're thinking about it. So if I buy them coffee, they might think about it more. So that's all of the indicators. The last one down at the bottom is essentially you take the points earned divided by the maximum points, and you get your percentage. In this case, we got 1,054 divided by 1,350 gets us to approximately 78%. So.
And what's that 78%?
It's this number divided by this number. What does it mean? What does it mean? Okay, so what it means is if you hit all of your indicators exceptionally well and you got everything at 100%, then you would be closer to 100%. What that means is that there's areas that are in need of improvement. So if you go down and you can take a look at the percentage of points earned, that would be something that I would recommend looking down. What are the areas that are the highest? What are the areas that are the lowest? And that is something that we will do as a district data team. We also look at it with our principals and say, okay, what areas are we still in need some improvement, and what dive deeper into the data and say, okay, what are some of the factors that are contributing to that? In addition to, as I said, the report in September, the report I gave you last week, as well as our NWA, our local assessments, as Mr. Scott was talking about, we're going to produce some local assessments to give us the full picture of the district. So in essence, I wish I could say that this is different than last year, or we could compare to last year, but remember we added the entire second indicator. So I cannot make a comparison to last year for the total sum. We can do that next year, which is something that we would talk about. One last piece I do want to address, there's some boxes down at the bottom.
Before you go on.
Yes, sir.
Because I have a strongly held opinion on this. This is the nuttiest thing I've ever seen. Because it takes apples, oranges, and puppies, adds them together, and comes up with a number. I mean, it's just the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Well, I would respectfully disagree. So I would say that if we talk about what do we want for a well-rounded student that graduates from Milford Public Schools, we do get the report in the fall that says, here's your specific academic indicator, how many students are performing at grade level. So we have that indication. We have our local assessments that talk about specific academic indicators. But we know that things like students having access to physical fitness, being in the arts, that gains interest for certain students that perhaps aren't academically inclined. We know that if we focus on graduation rates, that puts a lens on those students that perhaps fell through the cracks before, but also the chronic absenteeism piece. That's something we know that if we don't pay attention to, that more and more students become disengaged from school, that's going to have an impact on our numbers as well. So that it impacts kids individually, which we feel is important, but it's also saying that it's going to impact our overall achievement for the students. And then, of course, the college and career readiness, that's something that we all want to pay attention to. It's an important factor that's not just about math, science, social studies, and English. It's about a well-rounded student. So I agree that you could throw the puppies in there, and I want to say you used that line last year, because I remember the puppies.
I changed the puppies.
Was it something else?
It was
kittens,
koala bears or something.
But, and I'm not trying to convince you that this is the right or wrong thing. I would say that I prefer this to the previous report because there's more indicators here. It shines a light on things, like chronic absenteeism, which we should pay attention to.
Just a quick question on the fitness. You talked about the participation rate, but it says a fitness rate. Is that I don't even know what they have now, but when I was in school, we had presidential fitness.
Yes,
test.
like how many
Is it something
sit-ups
like
did you
that?
do?
Yeah, how many pull-ups? I couldn't do one.
You want to take it?
I'm trying to remember, but there's a set of physical fitness skills that you have to be able to demonstrate, to run the mile in particular, and be able to run the mile. I don't know if it's by
Pacer test, I
time.
hear that a lot. So
Pardon me?
A pacer test. My kid talks about
Chin-ups,
that all
sit-ups,
the
all that
time.
kind of stuff.
Yeah, there used to be the chin-ups. I don't think that there's the chin-ups anymore, but there's different things, and students have to do them, and there's a passing rate for that.
We can get you specific.
I was just curious. So right now, they're saying, though we have two schools that they say we didn't participate at all, we've got 60% of our students basically pass this test, are physically fit.
Correct.
According to
Correct.
the government.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not 0% participate. If you're under 50%, you get 0 credit.
Okay.
So.
And does that also include the fitness rate? You get 0 credit?
It does, because there's a detailed formula. So if you're at a certain percentage, if you're at 100% fitness rate, you get a 1.0 multiplier. If you're below that, you might get a 0.5 multiplier. So that impacts your points earned over here.
Okay.
So this is one of those ones that I would look into more carefully with the state. In the arts, I think we would get more credit here. I know a significant number of our students have access to the fine arts in many of these different areas. As you know, if you look outside at our art show, or if you want to go to many of our concerts coming up, it's a tremendous participation in these valuable elements of our program. So the last piece here, a couple of things just very quickly. The bottom bracket there is about the gap, and this is something that has become also important in the state, of whether or not there's a gap between your students' achievement and that high needs group. And the bottom line is, without getting into much details, if you're in the bottom 1/3, then there is a gap. But if you're with 2/3 of the majority, you're not in the gap. In our case, we are not in the gap, and essentially the way you look at that is you look at that second to last column, and they give you the state gap, the mean plus 1 standard deviation is 16.5. Our gap is 14.2, so we're below that number. It says that we're not. So that is something that we do have to pay attention to, and this is something the state pays closely attention to as well. Yes?
And we do have a gap problem, though, in kindergarten to 3rd grade. Is that the issue? The state has contacted us about something, providing additional assistance?
Correct. There was, we were one of the 12 districts in the state. They take a cohort of 1/3 of the districts every year as part of their improvement plan. The state structured improvement plan is the 3rd phase of it as part of their ESSA waiver with the federal government. And I'm throwing a lot of acronyms out, I realize that. But in essence, they took a look at how well our 3rd grade students did on the SBA and then the high needs. And we were identified as one of the 12 districts that they would come and do more exploration on. I think I gave this report out, but we had a visit from 5 state officials, and we had a full team of teachers and administrators. I would say there's about 16 of us. And they took us through a very detailed survey for 4 hours. And we're still waiting for the results of that. But the benefit to that, too, is that they're going to take a closer look at all of our assessments and our systems and our practices. If we're selected, actually, there's a second round There's 12, and then it gets narrowed down to 6. So if we're selected as the 6th, they would come in and give us further assistance.
And were we selected because our gap is unusually large?
There's 3 factors, and I'm going to have to try to remember. One of them was the achievement gap. 2 was the percentage of students that were identified. It might be an outlier, so in other words, if the state average is 10%, I'm just making these up, and we had 15% of students identified, that might be an indicator. The other one was participation rate. Do we have enough of our students of high needs participate? They didn't tell us which one of those it was. They just said that we're coming in to work with you. They did not, even when we met with them, they didn't say this is the factor. But they're under a mandate to identify and help districts as part of their grant.
Yes.
Mrs. Glenn, I mean, I think this is a significant issue that the board should look at in a specific presentation.
Look at what specifically?
The gap in the third grade and why we were selected as one of the schools that the state should be investigating.
Okay, we'll look into that. My understanding was that it was somewhat of a random selection, that they choose 1/3 each year. So
they take a third of all districts, and then they do a closer analysis for a number, and then they select 12, and then you go through a process, and if you're chosen, you go to the next round of 6, where you actually can get financial assistance. They can, you get personnel assistance. They have a lot of experts at the state that can come in and help you with the process. I can tell you it's been a very enlightening process that we've gone through as a district. I've met with, with Carol Swift and Ms. Jensenel and Ms. Lisa Swanson about taking a look at our achievement scores and taking a close look at what we're actually doing in those grades. So it's been a benefit to us to see where things are working well and where things are perhaps misaligned. So it's been very useful to us.
So when do you expect to hear back from them?
I was hoping by now, to be honest with you. We did it about 4 weeks ago. They sent out a follow-up survey about 2 weeks ago, and I was anticipating some further selection. Their timeline is very compressed. I think they have to actually start working with districts by May 1st, so I anticipated something a little quicker than this right now.
So then we can perhaps plan a follow-up once you
Sure,
get
and
some
I would,
information from them.
I could probably reach out to the folks who came from the state, maybe even they could give us some more insights as well. They were definitely open to that process, but obviously I have to check with them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and the last box there at the bottom right-hand corner is participation rate. The goal for every district is over 95%. As you can see, we've reached that goal in the previous year. I wanted to give you, I don't know how well you can see this, but you can probably see it in your PowerPoint, the color indicators. I changed the columns here, so this is a new sheet. This is our current one, is the first column, and then this is last year's rate. I removed indicator 2, again, because there was no rating on that last year. So in essence, if we take a look at our ELA performance, it's essentially flat. We're seeing small increases in our math science performance. We're seeing a decrease in the chronic absenteeism rate. In this case, it was 8.5 down to 7.3, high need 16 to 13. Career college ready courses and percentages of exams going up. Again, that's an area that I want to see more increase in. The decrease in our on-track graduation, that's 9th grade, decrease in our 4-year, 6-year, and graduation rates. I can tell you that was the 2015 rate. We did get some recent numbers for 2016. There was a significant increase again. So we would anticipate those numbers to go up, but there was a decrease there. In post-secondary entrance, an increase, physical fitness relatively flat, and arts access, some increase there. So that was just to give you a comparison year over year in a slight way, and we're hoping again to see progress in all of these areas in the coming years. One final thing we did last year, because
that is by far your best chart.
You like that one?
Yes.
Okay, color coding?
Color coded, okay. And it provides a lot of information.
Excellent, thank you. We're going to go out on a high note. So comparison district, we provided this information last year, and we just wanted to update you. Again, this is, you asked me what that number is. Well, here's the number. for everybody, so. Okay?
Final questions? Ms. Federico?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I may have said something like this last year as well, too. You know, for years, I've been hearing educators say, you know, there's more to a school, there's more to schools than a test score. There's more to measure. And if you look at just a test score, and especially if it's a cut score, that doesn't tell you the whole picture. So I think this is an attempt to bring together the whole picture. It's not perfect by any means. It's probably not what I would sit down and choose or you would sit down and choose, but again, I appreciate the attempt at trying to look at the whole picture of the school and of the district. I think it is confusing for me that when we get to the bottom and we get to that 78.1, what does it mean? And it's unfortunate, I know it's not your report, but you know, your design, but it's unfortunate that they give you a state average or index for every single line except the last one. So it would be interesting to see if it's published somewhere with what that state average is.
I will actually see if that's published somewhere. They have a new data site. I'm not sure if it is.
Okay.
But I'm actually interested in that as well.
Okay, and it seems like if we compare to the state average, in almost, I think, every metric that I saw, we're doing slightly better than the state average. Now, I'm not sure that that's exactly our best goal, but at least it's an indicator that we're doing better. And then when I see how we're doing in comparison to the districts, these are DRG districts, correct? Or
these are the districts that we typically show as part of our comparison. I think they're similar districts to ours in terms of size and population.
Okay, so again, we seem to be at the top. Certainly lots of room for improvement, but it's really helpful to have those couple of benchmarks. That's it.
Thank you. Other questions, Dr. Gregory?
With respect to Jennifer's ideas, it would be helpful if you're pulling data from the overall state average to pull the district reference group average, not just the select districts, but the whole district reference group and maybe the district reference group above it.
We can get that for you.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next agenda item includes 3 policies that are being brought forward for third reading. So,
could I ask, is it possible, due to the late hour, is it possible to put these 3 off until next month? Or are they crucial to get through them?
no, might we do them at the committee of the whole?
Oh, we could.
The one thing I would say, maybe that it would make it easier, even going to the committee of the whole, the concussion policy, in all honesty, there's 0 change to it. But the concussion policy was brought to you in 2015. So what I did, since this is 2 years later, was I sent it to Dr. Carlson, our medical advisor, asked him to please take a look at it. Is there anything that needed to be changed? Were there any changes in laws or et cetera? And he emailed back and he said, no, there's been absolutely no change, that it is fine exactly as is. So it's just being brought forward to you so that it now says that it was looked again at in 2017. So that can still be brought forward, but it's fine as is.
So would anybody object to putting these off to the committee of the whole meeting as first reading?
No objection.
All of them? The 3 of them, the 3 policies.
Maybe what would be helpful is if the board has questions on any of them, if they could email those in advance.
Sure.
They're pretty boilerplate. These are mandated by
Correct,
law.
yeah.
So
right. All right, so we will do that. Put those off to the committee of the whole meeting. So we'll move on to your item 7, Dr. Feaser.
the Human Resources Report. Mrs. Capazza?
Thank you. Moving up in the world here. Okay, so this month we have our job postings, personnel recommendations, retirements, resignations, terminations, and stipend appointments. I did want to point out, or give you an update, I should say, that we are up to 9 retirements this year. 3 of whom have already retired mid-year. So that's 6 for the end of the year. And I'll try to give you a monthly update on that as well. And also, sorry, the coaching stipends for the spring for each of the high schools are also enclosed.
Any questions?
Just curious, we talked about there was going to be some freezes on some open positions maybe. Are any of those no longer listed or?
Actually, we have, we've kept the postings up, but we haven't intentionally have not filled many positions. You can see from the new employees that we have filled, obviously some teaching positions, substitute teachers because they're per diem, as well as a para. We needed a van driver because somebody quit. So in our weekly cabinet meeting, we discuss who we're going to move forward and who we're going to kind of hold off on.
So there's still, so even if they're not going to be filled right now, they're still listed as open positions.
If they're still posted, right. Some of them have just naturally come down over the course of time, but yes, some are still posted.
Any questions on the human resources report?
I have a question. Yeah. Is it unusual for people to retire during the year, but not wait till the end of the year?
It used to be unusual, but the past 5-6 years, I've seen that trend, and I don't know if it's because people are hired mid-year, and then once they've hit their 35 or 37 and a half years, they retire, or you know, they're moving down south, they have a time limit on it, I don't know. But it used to be very unusual, and it's not so anymore, and that's not just a Milford trend, it's a statewide trend, really.
Thanks.
Any other questions on the personnel report? Okay.
And the last report that we have is the disbursement report. Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Dr. Fieser. Members of the board, you have in front of you the disbursement report for all expenditures over $1,500 for the month of February. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have on the report.
Any questions? Mrs.
Just
Krasinski?
a quick one. There's first page, little past halfway, reimbursement grant for shortage teacher salaries. I was just curious what that was. It's the last
number 17 in that group.
Yeah, it's 17 right before the 16 in the first column. Milford Board of Ed grants.
Yeah, 188, 191. One second. Sometimes the nomenclature is not exactly what it appears to be. Let's see here. I will have to get you an explanation for that. I don't have more detail than that, so we will definitely get you an answer for that.
Any other questions on the disbursement report? Okay. Is that it for your, that's it for your report, Dr. Fieser?
Yes, it is.
Okay, move on to the consent agenda.
Okay. Motion to consent agenda items. A, February 13th, 2017 business meeting, and B, February 27th, 2017 committee of the whole meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we move on to unfinished business, proposed revision to GP 17 officers for second reading and possible action. Am I to understand, Dr. Gregory, that you have a little tweak that you wanted to bring up? Did some go the other way?
Yeah, those are all for that side, I counted. So,
This is an edit to the second version of the policy with a further tweak to capitalize the S in 17.4. But the addition is 17.5.1 that basically reasserts the stricken phrase about every attempt shall be made to seek representation from both parties in the leadership roles if the composition of the board is equally divided. That had been reasserted under 17.4, but had not been reasserted under 17.5. And so this clarifies that value for desiring representation from both parties in the leadership roles of the board in the event of an evenly split board, in the further event that the evenly split board is unable to elect a chair and it goes to the Board of Aldermen.
Does that clarification, Mrs. Federico, concern you at all? You're the one that has put this together.
Thank you, Mrs. Glenn. No, it does not concern me at all. So I want to thank Dr. Gregory for bringing that forward. I think it does add clarification and reminds us of an important value. So I agree.
Okay, so last month we had a first reading for two different versions. So what Dr. Gregory just passed out would be a draft of version 2. It's not noted. With a modification to what was presented last month. Are there any questions on this piece? My thought was, if there's no further discussion on this, that seeing that Mr. Jagosinski brought forward his version initially, that we would vote on that, and if that were to pass, then that would put the issue to rest. If that were to fail, then we would vote on version 2. If that were to pass, that would put it to rest. If it fails, then we have the current policy that we are operating under now, anyway.
If we voted, okay, if it went to version 2, it would now include the...
It would include the as amended.
Version 2 as amended, right?
It would, yeah.
Yep.
Do you have a copy? Did you get a copy of this with the green?
Yep. Yep.
Would you like to make a motion, Mr. Jagosinski?
Yeah, I move that move to approve the proposed changes to governance process GP 17 as outlined in draft version 1 be approved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, is there discussion?
Yeah.
On the motion?
Yeah. I guess I just want to reiterate and kind of summarize what took place at the last meeting, because it appears that the Democratic members and the Republican members of the board have a very different experience at the beginning of this board. That the Democrats look at this as a very smooth process that wound up with a board that operates very well. I don't argue that we have a board that operates very well. But from a Republican's perspective, it was not a smooth operation. It was an operation in which we would have preferred that the chairmanship be divided between the two parties, because the two parties have equal representation. That was rejected. We really took strong exception to the fact that the Democrats requested, in effect, a veto on who was selected for the majority position. And I can tell you from our caucus that was a very difficult issue. And while, you know, we were able to put it aside and say, you know, we're not going to make a big deal about this issue because we want a board that's non-political. If you get another set of 5 people, either in the Democratic Party or in the Republican Party, that's put in this position, it's very likely that you're going to start out the board in a very contentious situation. You know, if, you know, we had said, you know, we'll agree to anybody you want for the board chairman except Sue Glennon. You know, picture how, you know, you would feel if that statement was made. And that's how we felt. And, you know, I'm very happy with the way things are. I have no complaints with the way things are. But I know that if this situation comes up in the future, it has a very strong probability of starting off a board on a very negative note. And that's why I've suggested this change, and I sincerely hope that everybody will, you know, vote for it.
Other comments? Ms. Federico?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank you for bringing the version forward last month when I was sick with the flu. I did watch the meeting from home, and I appreciated all the commentary that was given. I want to thank Mr. Jagosinski for bringing this up because I agree that it needs to be, that it should be clearly stated if we can in our board governance process what's going to happen when there is an evenly split board, because that did not exist at the time that this board came together. However, I disagree with the proposal, obviously, for how the board leadership is selected. And the reason for me is that if you have a 5-5 board, you have to work together in a bipartisan fashion. You can't have, you know, here's our Republican leader and here's our Democratic leader. You have to have leadership that everyone agrees upon, or at least a majority of the board agrees upon. And particularly those 2 positions of chair and board corresponding secretary, you know, those are official state sanctioned, I'm not sure if that's the right terminology, but those are state prescribed positions. And to put someone in those positions that could only have the support of, let's say, 3 members of the board, if you have 5 members from one party who selects a person based on their majority within their party of 3 members, you could end up with a much more partisan situation than we've had on this board. And I think the comments about how well the board has worked together just solidifies that the leadership that we have is the right leadership in this case because we all had to work together. And if this were to happen again, my preference would be for it to be decided the same way. And that's why I brought forward the version that proposes basically the same thing that we actually did as this board was formed.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
The reason why this board has worked together so well is because every time this has come up, we've acquiesced. We wanted 2 chairs, 1 for a year, 1 for a year. You said no. Oh, okay. We'll go along with what you say. You wanted to have a veto on who the majority leader was. We said, because we want to be nonpartisan, we acquiesced. So this has not been, you know, a 50-50 relationship. This has been, at best, a 60-40 relationship. If you look at every single 6-4 vote that this board has taken, Democrats have voted 100% party line, and Republicans have never voted 100% party line.
Could we stick to the issue, which is the policy, okay? Not how we vote or anything like that. And I am going to point out that you're putting your particular points of view out there. You're not speaking for the board. You're speaking for you. But if you could please stick to the motion, which is the policy, not how we vote.
Well, the point was that this board is working so well, and
well,
my point is...
You made that point, though. You made the point that the board is working so well, so that is the point that you've made.
But now my further point is that this board works so well because the Republicans have gone out of their way to act in a nonpartisan way.
Well, that's your perspective.
Well,
so, it's your perspective. So are there other comments on this particular motion? Dr. Gregory?
I guess I thought we were working together well because we were all interested in doing what's best for the kids in Milford.
Thank
you. The perception, if you get everything you want, it's easy to say, you're not giving up anything. We've been giving up things along the way. And, what have you given up?
Again, this is about the motion. This is not about he said, she said, or what.
Dr. Gregory brought up the issue.
The issue is that we're all trying to work together for the better of the kids.
Right.
So I would add that the way that the process was handled in 2015 actually duplicated a process that had been handled going back several years, which I believe Attorney Dugas pointed out. So there is precedent within the Board of Education to handle a split board the way it was handled in 2015. But I mean, it could not have been handled in a more nonpartisan way in terms of voting, allowing the full 10 members of the board to elect their leadership. I have to agree with what Mrs. Federico said, that under the version 1 proposal, you are literally leaving the potential of the board chair. If the board chair, the elected board chair, cannot fulfill the term, the majority leader, vice chair, board, secretary, whatever name you want to give it, steps into that role, and that person has been selected by, it could be a minimum of 3 members of the board. I find that very troubling. I think that it should be a majority of board members make the selection.
But it's true that in every case except where there's a 5-5 split, it's true that the majority leader is selected by as few as 3 members.
Well, but you have a majority party then, so it's different. I mean, I think when it's an evenly split board, it needs to be handled differently because you do not have a majority party. So
that's the difference, okay? What I would like to see is a nonpartisan board, a board where people are not concerned who's in the majority, a board where each member is respected as an individual and each board member operates in what they perceive to be the best interest, instead of operating as party members. That's appropriate for the Board of Aldermen. They're purely political, they should fight it out politically. A Board of Education should operate in a way that's completely non-political, and who's in the majority or who's in the minority shouldn't matter. Every effort should be made to respect each and every individual on the board.
Well, unfortunately, it's the city charter that makes us partisan, so in name. But I think what you're saying is we each need to individually bring that to the table. That's a value statement for us to make individually. But as a board of 10, again, we are 10 members, and I can't support version 1 because I feel that all 10 members, when we have a split board, should be electing those 2 people versus a small group choosing one of them. To me, that's the epitome of nonpartisanship, is when all 10 members are making that selection, which is how it was handled. I mean, it was handled by election. So are there other?
Well, it wasn't handled by election, it was handled in the back room.
It was handled by election, Mr. Jakuzinski. There was a formal vote taken at a public meeting. Are there any other?
Yeah, we were told in the back room that you can't do this. We acquiesce.
All right, that's enough of that.
I
Mrs.
just want to
Casey?
say that I do agree with Ms. Federico and Mrs. Glenn, and I do not agree with the version that Mr. Jagodinski has brought forward. And I think, remember, we do need to remember why we are here and what our purpose is, and who we are representing, and what our role is.
Thank you. Other comments?
Can we take a break for, can we take a recess for 5 minutes?
Does anybody object to a 5-minute recess? All right. No, that, I mean, yes, we may. Nobody objects.
No, no.
Oh. We have a roll. 5 minutes. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order.
10:15.
So it's 10:14. Okay, is there other other discussion on that motion? I'll have Mrs. I'll have Mrs. Ricky read the motion, please.
Okay. Excuse me. Make a motion to approve the proposed change to Governance Policy 17 as outlined in version 1.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second on the floor. We've had discussion. So all in favor would be aye.
Aye.
Opposed would be no. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Roll call, please.
Claire Casey?
No.
Michael DeGrego?
Yes.
Suzanne DeBias?
Yes.
Jennifer Federico?
No.
Dr. Jess Gregory?
No.
Walter Hagedorn?
Yes.
Tom Jagodzinski?
Yes.
Susan Krasinski?
Yes.
Earl Whiskeyman?
No.
Susan Glenn?
No.
5-5.
Motion fails,
Motion
5-5.
fails.
Mrs. Federico, do you have a motion for version 2?
Yes, I make a motion to approve the proposed change to GP 17 as outlined in draft version 2 as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Gregory. Okay, is there discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. There was no new business. Board comment. Dr. Gregory.
Hi, I was disheartened by the reduction of the budget by the Board of Finance in the amount of the school resource officer that we've included for the past 2 budgets without success. Tonight's presentation highlighted the important role of the school resource officers, and I would like to see an enhanced shared commitment to school safety beyond the groups represented here. And so I guess I'm publicly asking that our aldermen vote to restore the funds for the school resource officer.
I would agree with that.
I would as well.
I would.
Other board comment? Yes, Mrs. Krasinski.
A week or two ago, I attended the Realtors Breakfast that the superintendent had, and it was excellent. It was very informative. I was sitting here, even though I'm on the board, going, oh yeah, that's great. I heard from some of my colleagues that were there, and they thought it was fantastic. So it was a great thing, and I think it was good for our schools.
Thank you. Glad it was informative.
Very informative.
Any other board comment? I attended the WAVE event. Mr. Krasinski was there, Mr. Jagodzinski was there. I've gone it for a couple of years now. It's always a fun event. I don't know about if you guys were able to stay, but I intermingled a little bit. They have stations. You can go around and meet some of the families and some of the kids. I made a spoon puppet. So it's just if you have an opportunity to visit the WAVE program in the future, I would suggest that you go because it is a really great program.
Mrs. Glennon, may I offer one comment?
Yes.
Just an information piece, otherwise, so we don't have to send an email. So in light of the weather, since we don't know what may happen on Wednesday, and that's a parent conference day. So, and even if there was a delayed opening, if there's an early dismissal for the conferences, so it would just be ridiculous. So what we did is we've already notified parents that we're moving Wednesday's parent conference day off to next Wednesday.
Okay.
And so, just want to let you know that.
Very good. And there's no school tomorrow, right?
And there's no school tomorrow.
Okay. Any further comment?
Board members.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Sorry about that. No, see,
I did it.
No, but we can't lock.
They don't want
Did it come later?
Oh, maybe when it was.
I know.